Hello there, and welcome to the Drift to the Stars. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Wherever you are right now, lying down, wrapped in something warm, the day finally loosening its hold, you are exactly where you need to be. This is a place with no urgency, no destination, just a slow, curious journey through some of the quietest wonders the universe has to offer. Things that are true, things that are strange, things that somehow make the world feel safer the more you sit with them. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, if you're ready, let's begin. There is something inside your throat that has been with us longer than language, longer than cities, longer even than the first word anyone ever tried to say. Picture a reed at the edge of a slow river. The wind moves through it, and the reed doesn't resist. It simply shapes the air into something that carries. That is, in its quietest essence, what your body does every time you speak. Your larynx, that small, cartilaginous structure sitting just below your chin, is a variation on a design so ancient that fish had early versions of it before the first creature ever dragged itself onto land. The muscles, the folds, the way breath becomes something shaped this architecture predates memory itself. The fact, plainly, the basic anatomical structures used in human vocalization are evolutionary descendants of gill arches in ancient fish structures that existed long before any creature breathed air. What that means, quietly, is this. When you sigh at the end of a long day, you are using something older than the land you're lying on. The voice is not something you learned. It is something you inherited from an unbroken line of creatures that found a way to reach toward each other across the dark. Somewhere far above you, farther than any thought can comfortably travel, the universe is making a sound. Not the kind you could hear with your ears pressed against the sky. Not even close. Imagine a note so low, so impossibly drawn out, that a single vibration of it would take longer than recorded human history to complete. Astronomers have detected pressure waves moving through clusters of distant gas, ancient ripples, still traveling, still real. The universe did not begin in silence. It began in motion, and that motion never fully stopped. The fact, plainly, astronomers have detected sound waves in galaxy clusters, particularly in the Perseus cluster, that correspond to a B-flat, roughly 57 octaves below middle C, with a wave period of about 10 million years. There is something gently leveling about that. The universe hums in a register so deep that no living thing could ever perceive it, and yet it hums. Whatever makes sound feel like companionship, like presence, like the sense that something is there, that feeling has a version of itself at the scale of galaxies. You did not imagine that the universe feels alive. You simply felt something true. In a hospital ward, in the small and careful hours of the night, a nurse leans close to a bassinet and begins to sing. The infant inside is very small, early. The world arrived too soon, and the body is still learning how to be in it. But something happens when the singing begins. The breathing, which had been uneven and quick, begins to slow. The chest rises and falls in longer intervals. The heart rate, monitored on a screen nearby, settles, not because the song contains any instruction, but because the body recognizes something. Safety, rhythm, the presence of another. The fact, plainly, multiple clinical studies have found that live lullaby singing by a parent or trained music therapist measurably stabilizes the heart rate, oxygen saturation, and breathing patterns of premature infants in neonatal intensive care units. A song doesn't need to be understood to do its work. It only needs to arrive. The body has known how to receive music since long before the mind had words to describe what it was feeling. Even the smallest, newest human beings carry that knowledge forward with them, intact. If you pressed your ear against the side of a mountain, really pressed it, the cold rock against your cheek, the smell of stone and lichen close you, would be leaning into something that carries sound in its own quiet way. Sound moves through air the way we're used to, but through solid granite, through the dense and ancient bones of a mountain range, it moves more than 20 times faster. Not louder, not more dramatic, just faster, carried by matter that is packed close together, molecules that pass vibration along with an efficiency that air, loose and wandering, cannot match. The earth beneath you is not inert. It conducts, it carries, it transmits. The fact, plainly, sound travels through air at roughly 343 meters per second, but through granite, it travels at approximately 6,000 meters per second, nearly 18 times faster. Rock remembers contact differently than air does. When something moves through stone, the message passes along quickly, intimately, without much being lost. The ground beneath you right now, whatever it is made of, is carrying vibrations you will never know about. Distant traffic, a train somewhere, the slow settling of foundations. The world is always in conversation with itself, just below the register of your attention. Bring your awareness, gently, to your ears, not to anything you're hearing, just to the fact of them. Those small, curved structures on either side of your head, quietly doing the most extraordinary thing. Inside each one, past the canal and the drum and the 3 smallest bones in your entire body, there are hair cells, thousands of them. And some of those cells respond to sound so faint that the eardrum moves a distance smaller than the diameter of a single hydrogen atom, the smallest atom there is. The fact, plainly, the human ear is sensitive enough to detect displacements of the eardrum as small as 1/10 of a picometer, smaller than the diameter of a hydrogen atom at the threshold of hearing. You carry instruments of extraordinary delicacy inside your head, and they have been working your entire life, without rest, without maintenance, without your attention. Right now, they are translating the world into signals your brain assembles into meaning. The hum of the room, the sound of your own breath, perhaps the distant sound of the world outside, softened by walls and distance. All of it arriving, all of it held, all of it gently released. Somewhere in the ocean right now, perhaps in the North Atlantic, perhaps in the slow cold water near Antarctica, a whale is singing. You cannot hear it from here. The frequency is too low, the distance too vast, and there is too much land and air between you and the water. But it is happening. A creature the size of a city bus, moving slowly through dark water, producing a call that will travel not just for miles but for hundreds of miles, sometimes crossing an entire ocean basin before it fades below the threshold of detection. Not shouting, not urgent, just singing, the way it has always sung. The fact, plainly, low-frequency whale calls, particularly those of blue and fin whales, can travel up to 1,000 miles or more through the ocean's Sofar Channel, a naturally occurring acoustic waveguide under favorable conditions. There is something comforting about knowing the ocean is full of songs you will never hear. The world does not need your attention to continue being beautiful. Right now, in the dark and the cold and the vast blue pressure of the deep, something ancient is calling to something ancient, and the water is carrying the message along, faithfully, all the way to wherever it needs to go. Before you knew a single word, you already knew music. Before you knew what your mother's face looked like, you knew the melody of her voice, the rise and fall of it, the pace of it, the particular warmth of the frequencies that passed through water and tissue and reached you in the dim, warm world before the world. You were listening, categorizing, learning the emotional texture of sound months before you would ever need to understand its meaning. The fact, plainly, research published in the journal Current Biology found that newborns cry with melodic contours that match the intonation patterns of their native language patterns absorbed during the last trimester of pregnancy. Language begins as music. Meaning begins as melody. The very first thing you learned about communication was not a word, not a concept, it was a shape. The shape of a voice you loved. And somewhere beneath everything that has happened since, that shape is still there, still familiar, still the thing your nervous system recognizes as safe, here, not alone. In a laboratory, A researcher focuses a beam of sound at a small container of water. She adjusts the frequency carefully, precisely, and then, at a specific point, a point she has found before and knows how to find again, something happens. A droplet of water lifts, not dramatically, not violently. It simply rises from the surface and holds there, suspended between falling and floating, as if gravity has been temporarily negotiated with and has agreed to wait. The fact plainly, acoustic levitation is a real, demonstrated phenomenon in which standing sound waves create pressure nodes capable of suspending small objects, including water droplets, small insects, and granules of material in mid-air without any physical contact. Sound has weight, or rather, sound has force, and force can hold things. We think of sound as invisible, as passing, as something that happens and then is gone. But it pushes, it presses. It can, under the right conditions, hold a droplet of water in the air as gently as a cupped hand. The invisible world is always doing more than we remember to notice. Perhaps there is a cat somewhere near you tonight, or perhaps you are remembering one warm, heavy, settled against your leg, the low motor of its contentment moving through you, like a small, steady tide. That sound, the purr, is not just comfort for the cat. It turns out it may be comfort for the body that holds it. The frequencies at which cats purr, generally between 25 and 50 Hz, overlap with the frequencies that physical therapists sometimes use in therapeutic vibration for bone and tissue recovery. Something in the purr falls in the range that promotes healing. The fact, plainly, research has found that the frequencies of cat purring between 25 and 50 Hz correspond to the range shown in studies to stimulate bone density and promote healing of fractures and connective tissue. Cats have been living alongside humans for thousands of years, and we have always known they were good for something we couldn't quite name. Maybe some part of it was this. Maybe the long winter evenings with a cat in your lap were quietly doing something medicinal. Maybe rest always was. Close your eyes, if they aren't already. Think of the last piece of music that moved you. Not necessarily the loudest part, not the climax. Think of the moment just after the moment the last note ended. The silence that followed. That silence felt like something, didn't it? Not empty, not nothing. It had a texture, a color, a kind of presence that the music itself had created. That is not imagination. The brain does not simply stop processing when sound ends. In the pause between notes, the auditory cortex continues to work, analyzing, holding, completing the pattern. Silence is not the absence of music. It is music's quietest movement. The fact, plainly, neuroscience research has shown that the auditory cortex remains active during silences embedded in music, continuing to process temporal and structural patterns, a phenomenon sometimes described as the brain filling in the musical phrase. Rest is never empty. Even in the pause, something continues. Even in the quiet moments of your life, the ones that felt like nothing was happening, your mind was working gently, holding the shape of what came before, waiting patiently for what might come next. You have never actually stopped listening. You have only changed what you were listening for. Far above every cloud, above every weather system, above the thin blue line where atmosphere becomes something else entirely, the sun is ringing. Not the way a bell rings, sudden, struck, fading. More the way an enormous and ancient thing rings when everything inside it is in motion at once. Pressure waves move through the sun's interior, bouncing between its surface and its deep layers, producing oscillations that cause the entire star to pulse in and out by tiny amounts, over and over, in rhythms that take minutes to complete. Scientists on Earth can measure these pulses. They have mapped them. They have, in a sense, learned to read the sun the way you might press a hand to a chest and feel what's happening inside. The fact, plainly, helioseismology is the study of pressure waves, acoustic waves that propagate through the sun's interior, causing its surface to oscillate by amounts detectable from Earth, revealing the sun's internal structure the way seismic waves reveal Earth's. The star that warms your skin, that sets the clock of your days, that has been rising and setting for every single morning of your life. It is vibrating, slowly, continuously. A bell that has been ringing for 4.5 billion years and will keep ringing long after everything we have ever built has quietly returned to dust. No one else has ever made the sound you are capable of making. Not even someone who shares your face. Not even someone who grew from the same cell, who wore the same expression as a child, who laughs the same way at the same kinds of things. Your voice carries a pattern of overtones, a harmonic fingerprint shaped by the precise dimensions of your throat, your nasal cavity, your skull, the particular tension of your vocal folds at rest. These dimensions are yours alone. They have never existed before in exactly this configuration, and they will not exist again. The fact, plainly, the acoustic characteristics of a human voice, including its fundamental frequency, formant patterns, and harmonic spectrum, are unique to each individual and are used in forensic voice analysis as a form of biometric identification. There is something worth sitting with there. The sound you make when you speak, even when you are saying something ordinary, something forgettable, something you will not remember by morning. That sound has never existed before in the history of the universe. Every time you open your mouth, something genuinely new enters the world. Even in your most tired, your most quiet, your most unremarkable moments. On a warm evening, near a pond or a marsh or any still body of water, the frogs begin. One starts, or perhaps several start at once, it's hard to say. And then, within moments, something happens that no one planned and no one directed. The calls begin to organize. Not perfectly, not mechanically, but with a tendency towards synchrony, a rhythmic convergence that emerges from the simple fact of each frog listening to its neighbors and adjusting slightly in response. No leader, no score, just listening and responding, and the slow emergence of something that sounds from a distance, almost like intention. The fact, plainly, frog choruses exhibit a phenomenon called chorusing synchrony, in which individual males adjust the timing of their calls in response to neighbors, producing emergent rhythmic patterns, a form of self-organization studied in both biology and complex systems theory. Harmony does not require a conductor. It only requires listening. It only requires each part of a system being willing to hear what is around it and adjust, slightly, in response. There is a whole philosophy of community living in a frog pond on a summer evening, if you are quiet enough to receive it. Deep inside a hillside, past the entrance where light still reaches, past the second bend where it doesn't, there are chambers that ancient people found and marked, not randomly, not simply because the cave was there. Researchers studying Paleolithic painted caves in France and Spain have noticed something. The densest concentrations of cave paintings, the bison, the horses, the handprints tend to cluster in the chambers with the most striking acoustic properties. Chambers where sound bounces back in layers, where a voice or a drum or a clapping hand returns to you changed, enriched, multiplied. The paintings are, in a sense, where the cave sang back. The fact, plainly, archaeoacoustic research, including studies by Igor Reznikov and others, has found statistically significant correlations between the locations of Paleolithic cave paintings and the most acoustically resonant spots within those cave systems. Your ancestors did not separate music from meaning, or sound from the sacred. They walked into the dark, and they found the places where the earth spoke back, and they made those places beautiful. And somewhere in you, some inheritance of that impulse remains. Some part of you still recognizes that certain sounds in certain spaces mean you are in the right place. You are held. You belong here. Even right now, as you rest, your bones are listening, not metaphorically, literally. Sound waves traveling through the air reach not only your eardrums but also the bones of your skull, your jaw, your sternum, and those bones conduct vibration directly to the fluid of your inner ear. This is why your voice sounds so different when you hear a recording of it. What you hear from inside your own head includes the resonance of your entire skeletal structure. What the recording captures is only what escapes into the air. The fact, plainly, bone conduction, the transmission of sound through the bones of the skull directly to the cochlea, contributes to how we hear our own voices, which is why recorded voices sound thinner and less resonant than the voice we hear ourselves producing. You have been hearing yourself wrong your whole life, or rather you have been hearing yourself in a richer, fuller way that no one else has access to. The voice you know as yours, the one you hear when you speak, carries the resonance of your entire body inside it. What the world hears is a narrower thing. What you experience from the inside is something deeper, more complete. You are the only one who has ever truly heard your own voice. There is a layer in the ocean, not at the surface, not at the bottom, but somewhere in between where something remarkable happens to sound. The temperature and pressure at that depth reach a precise balance that causes sound waves to bend. Instead of spreading outward and fading, they curve back toward this layer, trapped, following it, traveling along it the way light follows a fiber optic cable. Scientists call it the SOFAR channel, sound fixing and ranging. And within it, sound does not fade the way it should. It persists. It travels. The fact, plainly, the SOFAR channel is a horizontal layer in the ocean, typically between 600 and 1,200 meters deep, where the speed of sound reaches a minimum, causing sound waves to refract toward it and become trapped, allowing low-frequency sounds to travel thousands of miles with minimal energy loss. The ocean has a whispering gallery, a passage built not by hands but by physics, by the specific behavior of water at specific temperatures and pressures. And through it, the deep things of the ocean have been passing messages to each other, across distances that dwarf continents. For as long as the ocean has been the ocean, even the sea has its quiet corridors. Even the sea has places where the sound stays close. When you listen to music you love, really love, the kind that reaches something beneath preference and touches something closer to recognition, your brain does not respond the way it responds to most things. It lights up everywhere. Language centers and motor regions and emotional processing areas and memory systems and the reward pathways that respond to food and warmth and the presence of someone you care about. Almost no other human activity produces simultaneous activation across so many distinct regions of the brain. Not reading, not problem solving, not conversation alone. Music reaches more of you at once than almost anything else. The fact, plainly, neuroimaging studies consistently show that music engages a broader network of brain regions, including auditory, motor, limbic, and prefrontal areas simultaneously, more so than most other complex cognitive tasks. Music is not a luxury the brain tolerates. It is something the brain was, in some sense, waiting for. Something it recognizes as deeply relevant to being alive, to being human, to being connected to other humans across time and distance. Every song that has ever moved you was moving something real, not just feeling, but structure, not just mood, but the actual firing pattern of the most complex thing in the known universe. In Tibet, in Japan, in traditions that stretch back further than most written records, someone picks up a metal bowl, runs a mallet slowly around its rim, and waits. The tone that emerges is not simple. It is layered a fundamental note, and above it, overtones that shimmer and shift, some of them almost at the edge of perception. And as you listen to it, something in you begins to slow. Not because you decided to slow, not because you remembered to breathe, but because the frequencies themselves are doing something your nervous system understands before your mind does. The fact, plainly, research has found that the acoustic properties of Tibetan singing bowls produce multi-harmonic tones, and studies measuring brainwave activity in listeners have observed increases in theta and delta wave activity, the brainwave patterns associated with deep relaxation and sleep during and after exposure. There is a technology in these bowls that predates every screen, every pharmaceutical, every sleep study. Someone, a very long time ago, discovered that certain sounds could set the body down gently, the way you might set a sleeping child into their bed. That knowledge was passed forward. It reached you here, tonight, even if only as a fact being described in a quiet voice. Something in your body may already be responding, even now. Step outside on a cold, clear night and listen. Not to anything in particular, just listen to the quality of the quiet. Then remember a warm summer evening, the way sound seemed to carry differently, the way distant conversations floated toward you more easily, the way the world felt acoustically closer. That was not imagination, that was physics. Warm air transmits sound faster than cold air, and the way sound refracts through layers of different temperatures affects how far and in what direction it travels. The fact, plainly, the speed of sound in air increases with temperature approximately 0.6 meters per second for every degree Celsius, and thermal gradients in the atmosphere cause sound waves to refract, bending upward in warm days and downward toward Earth's surface on cool evenings, which is why distant sounds carry farther at night. Summer evenings carry voices farther. Cool nights bend sound back toward the ground, toward you, toward the world at human scale. The physics of the atmosphere conspires, on certain nights, to make everything feel a little closer than it is. The sounds you hear on a quiet evening are not simply the sounds that are near. They are sounds the night has gathered and brought to you, gently, from farther away than you might have guessed. The very first sound ever captured by a machine, preserved, held, made repeatable, was a human voice. Not Edison's, not a famous voice. A Frenchman named Edouard Léon Scott de Martinville invented a device called the phonautograph in 1857, and in 1860, nearly 2 decades before Edison's phonograph, he recorded a few seconds of someone singing. The recording was never meant to be played back. It was meant only to be seen, a visual trace of sound on paper. For nearly 150 years, no one heard it. Then in 2008, audio historians used modern technology to play it back for the first time. The fact, plainly, in 2008, researchers at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory used optical scanning technology to play back a phonautograph recording made on April 9, 1860, a few bars of the French folk song Au clair de la lune, making it the oldest known recorded human voice. Someone sang into a machine in 1860, not knowing anyone would ever hear them. They were simply making a mark, and 148 years later, a room full of scientists went very quiet and listened to a voice from a world that no longer existed, singing a simple song. Nothing about that should be comforting, and yet it is. Something in the fact that voices persist, that they find ways to reach forward through time, feels less like loss and more like continuity. Lean toward any living green thing and consider what it might be doing right now. Not growing, that is too slow to see. Not photosynthesizing, that is invisible. Consider instead that it may be listening, not with ears, not with anything resembling a nervous system, but with roots that respond to vibration the way a hand responds to warmth by moving toward it. Researchers have found that plant roots will grow in the direction of recorded water sounds played through a speaker, even when no actual water is present. Something in the frequency of flowing water is recognized, responded to, followed. The fact, plainly. A 2017 study, published in Oecologia, found that plant roots demonstrate positive hydrotropism in response to the acoustic vibrations produced by flowing water, suggesting plants can detect and orient towards sound-produced vibrations in their environment. We have always spoken to plants in the half-embarrassed way people do things they suspect are true but cannot quite explain, and perhaps there was always something reasonable in that impulse. Not that the plant hears you the way another person hears you, but that the world is more responsive to vibration, to sound, to presence, to the fact of something moving nearby than our categories have always allowed. At the edge of a great plain, as the light falls and the air begins to cool, someone is speaking. Their words travel outward from their mouth in every direction at once. Invisible spheres of compressed and rarefied air expanding through the evening. And here is the quiet strangeness. The speed at which those words travel is not fixed. It changes with the temperature of the air. On a cool autumn evening, their voice moves slightly more slowly than it would on a hot afternoon. Not enough to notice, not enough to feel, but measurably, verifiably, genuinely different. The fact, plainly, the speed of sound in dry air at 20 degrees Celsius is approximately 343 meters per second, but at 0 degrees Celsius, it drops to approximately 331 meters per second, a difference that affects acoustic behavior in outdoor environments and is accounted for in precision acoustic engineering. The world adjusts itself around temperature in ways that are easy to forget. The air is not a neutral medium. It has moods, it has states. It carries sound differently, depending on what the day has done to it, what the night is beginning to do. Even the invisible substance you move through constantly is more complicated, more responsive, more alive with physics than it appears when you simply breathe it in and breathe it out without thinking. Before a single word is understood, before meaning has time to form, an infant responds to melody. Watch a newborn in the first days of life, before their eyes can properly focus, before they have learned to expect the particular smell of the person who feeds them. Play them music, any music, slow and gentle, and something happens in the face. Not a smile, not yet. Something quieter, a settling, an orientation toward the sound. The body has recognized something it knew before it was born. Melody arrived before the world did, and the body has not forgotten. The fact plainly, multiple studies in developmental psychology have found that neonates, newborns in the first days of life, show preferential responses to musical stimuli over speech stimuli in certain contexts, suggesting that melodic processing may have developmental priority over linguistic processing. Music is older in you than language. The part of you that responds to a slow, gentle melody when you are tired and the day has been long, that part was there before you had words for anything, before you knew what comfort was called. You simply knew how it felt when it arrived in the form of a sound. And your body, all these years later, still knows. Place 2 fingers gently on your throat and hum. Feel the vibration there that's steady, warm, trembling just beneath the skin. Now consider that to produce what you are feeling, more than 100 individual muscles are coordinating in real time, adjusting tension, controlling airflow, shaping the resonant chambers of your throat and mouth and head to produce something as simple and unremarkable as a single sustained tone. More muscles than it takes to walk, more coordination than it takes to catch something thrown at you from across a room. The fact, plainly, speech production involves the coordinated activity of approximately 100 muscles, including those of the respiratory system, larynx, pharynx, soft palate, tongue, jaw, and lips, making it one of the most motorically complex behaviors the human body performs. You do this without thinking. You have been doing it since before you can remember. Every conversation, every sigh, every half-formed thought you muttered to yourself in the kitchen this morning, all of it, this extraordinary choreography of more than 100 moving parts, executed effortlessly, automatically, as naturally as breathing, because it is breathing. It is breath that has learned to mean something. Beneath every ocean, cars, beneath the slow roll of surface waves, and the thermocline, and the SOFAR channel, the sea floor is not quiet. It never has been. Long before ships crossed the surface, long before submarines dove beneath it, the ocean was producing a constant, low, measurable sound, a hum that has no single source and no single cause. Waves interacting with each other in deep water, pressure fluctuations, the slow conversation of ocean and atmosphere and seafloor. It is detectable on seismometers on every continent. The planet wears it like a kind of background breath. The fact, plainly, the oceanic microseismic peak, also called the Earth's hum, is a continuous background vibration in the frequency range of 0.05 to 0.3. Hertz is generated primarily by ocean wave interactions, detectable by seismometers worldwide and distinct from earthquake activity. The Earth does not wait for something dramatic in order to make sound. In the ordinary course of being itself, oceans moving, pressure shifting, the planet rotating through its days, it produces a background resonance that has been present since before any living thing was here to notice it. You have always lived inside a sound. You were simply never told. Somewhere tonight, a small bird has tucked its head beneath its wing. Its eyes are closed. Its breathing has slowed. And in some corner of its sleeping brain, something is moving that is not a dream exactly, but is not silence either. Certain songbirds, zebrafinches among the best studied, produce faint, muffled versions of their songs during sleep. Neurons that fire during waking song fire again in sleep. The bird is rehearsing, consolidating, practicing the song it will need tomorrow, in the quiet of its own dreaming. The fact, plainly, research has shown that zebrafinches and other Oscine songbirds exhibit sleep replay neurons in the song control system fired during sleep, in patterns that closely mirror the patterns of waking song production, suggesting offline consolidation of vocal motor learning during sleep. Learning does not stop when you close your eyes. Something in the brain takes the events of the day, the things practiced, attempted, half understood, and works on them quietly while you rest. The bird sings in its sleep so that it will sing better in the morning. And you, in ways that are not so different, are doing something similar right now. Resting is not the opposite of learning. It is the part of learning that no one talks about. Rest your hand on your chest for a moment. Feel what is there, the slow lift and fall of breathing, and beneath that, steadier, more patient, the rhythm that has been keeping time since before you were born. Your heart has a pace, and that pace has always been something other people could reach. A mother carrying an infant, patting its back slowly, slower than the child's heart is beating, is giving that heart something to follow, something steady to synchronize toward. The body wants to match what it trusts. The fact, plainly, research in developmental psychology and nursing has found that rhythmic physical contact, such as a parent's rhythmic patting or rocking at rates close to resting heart rate, can measurably reduce infant distress and facilitate calming, consistent with theories of physiological synchrony between caregiver and infant. Every human body that has ever existed was first soothed by rhythm. Before words, before faces, before any understanding of the world rhythm. A steady, patient, repeated signal that meant something is here, something is calm, something is not afraid. That signal reached you when you were very small. Some part of you is still listening for it. Some part of you still relaxes when it arrives. In a laboratory that is also, somehow, a kind of magic show, a researcher focuses sound at a bubble. The bubble is tiny, suspended in water, vibrating at the frequency of the sound field around it. And then, at a precise, calibrated moment, the bubble collapses. And in the instant of that collapse, something happens that should not be possible. Light. A brief, blue-white flash, lasting a few billionths of a second. Sound became heat, became light. Energy transformed through stages that feel like a small violation of the categories we use to organize the world. The fact, plainly, sonoluminescence is a real, reproducible phenomenon in which acoustic cavitation, the rapid collapse of a bubble in a liquid driven by sound waves, generates temperatures briefly estimated to exceed 10,000 Kelvin, producing a flash of light lasting less than a nanosecond. Sound is not soft, or rather, sound is soft in the way water is soft, until it is not. The same phenomenon that makes a lullaby carry across a room can, under the right conditions, briefly produce temperatures rivaling the surface of the sun. The universe does not distinguish between the gentle and the extreme. It simply follows the laws. We are the ones who find some applications comforting and others astonishing. The physics, underneath it all, is the same physics. The Greeks knew something about space that modern acoustic engineers have had to rediscover. At Epidaurus, in the hills of the Peloponnese, A theater carved into stone 2,000 years ago can do something no modern concert hall achieves without extensive technological assistance. A person standing at the center of the stage strikes a match. Someone seated in the back row, 80 rows up, 50 meters away, in open air hears it, not the hiss of it, the strike, the sharp initial transient, perfectly, cleanly, without amplification. The fact plainly, the ancient Greek theater at Epidaurus, built around 340 BCE, has been studied by acoustic engineers who found that its limestone seating filters low-frequency background noise while preserving high-frequency signals, achieving speech intelligibility levels at the back rows that meet modern acoustic engineering standards without any electronic assistance. They did this by observation, by listening, by building and adjusting and listening again, by treating sound not as a byproduct of the space but as the point of it. There is a kind of patience in that, and a kind of trust in the material, in the geometry, in the idea that if you attend carefully enough to how something works, you can make something that works extraordinarily well. The theater at Epidaurus is still used today. People sit where people sat 2 millennia ago, and the stage still reaches them. In the dark and the cold of the deep ocean, where no sunlight has ever reached, something is looking at you. Not with eyes, with sound. A dolphin, passing in the blue-black water, sends a pulse of focused acoustic energy outward into the space ahead of it, and waits a fraction of a second for the echo to return. From that echo, it constructs a picture, the shape of the seafloor, the presence of fish, the location of another dolphin, a three-dimensional image of its world, assembled from reflected sound, updated thousands of times per minute. The fact, plainly, dolphin echolocation biosonar involves the production of click trains at frequencies up to 150,000 Hz, with the returning echoes processed to yield information about the distance, size, shape, texture, and movement of objects, a level of acoustic resolution that surpasses most human-engineered sonar systems. Sight feels like the fundamental sense, the one that gives us the world most fully. But dolphins have built a complete, rich, navigable picture of their entire world without it. Their reality is made of echoes, made of what comes back. And there is something quietly remarkable about that, the idea that you can know where you are, know what surrounds you, know you are not alone, simply by sending something out and listening for what returns. At some point today, it rained somewhere near you, or near somewhere you have been. Perhaps you heard it. Perhaps you were inside and it arrived as a change in the quality of the light, a softening of the air, a smell before a sound. And if you heard it, really heard it, the full texture of it on leaves or pavement or a window pane, something in you probably eased. Not because you decided to ease, not because rain is objectively pleasant, but because your brain received it as something specific, a broadband, naturalistic sound that masks irregular, unpredictable noise and replaces it with something consistent, enveloping, and safe. The fact plainly, rain and other forms of broadband, natural noise function as acoustic masking agents, reducing the brain's alerting response to unpredictable environmental sounds by raising the ambient noise floor, which neuroscience research links to reduced activity in the amygdala and measurable decreases in physiological stress markers. Rain tells the nervous system, nothing new is happening. Everything irregular, everything that might require attention, has been covered over by this one continuous presence. You can stop monitoring. You can stop sorting. You can simply be inside and let the rain be outside, and trust that the sound of it means the world is doing what it does, quietly, without needing anything from you tonight. Before breath, before light, before the first thing you were aware of being aware of, there was a sound, not a dramatic one, not a voice or a word or anything that carried meaning in any language, just a rhythm, consistent and warm, transmitted through fluid and tissue into whatever you were becoming. 60 to 80 times per minute. Never stopping, never asking anything of you, simply present, the way a lighthouse is present not for its own sake, but as a signal that orients everything around it. The fact, plainly, the fetal auditory system becomes functional enough to process external sounds by approximately 18 to 20 weeks of gestation, and research indicates that the maternal heartbeat transmitted both through tissue conduction and amniotic fluid is among the most consistently detected sounds throughout fetal development. The first sound you ever heard was not the world. It was the person who carried you. And your nervous system learned, in those months before anything else was certain, that this particular rhythm meant warmth, meant sustenance, meant continuity. Decades later, held close to someone you love, feeling their heartbeat against yours, something in you still knows what that means. The body remembers what the mind was never taught. There is a small space inside you, just behind your nose, that is doing something right now that you have never once asked it to do. When you hum, when you produce that simple, low, effortless sound with your mouth closed, the sinuses vibrate, and in vibrating, they produce something, nitric oxide, released into the nasal passages with each resonant exhalation. Nitric oxide that travels into the respiratory system, that dilates blood vessels, that has measurable, real, physiological effects on circulation and on the nervous system's movement toward calm. The fact, plainly. Research published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine found that humming increases nasal nitric oxide levels approximately 15-fold compared to quiet breathing, with nitric oxide having known roles in vasodilation, immune function, and the regulation of the autonomic nervous system. Your own voice is a pharmacy you have always carried, not metaphorically, chemically. The act of humming that gentle, almost thoughtless sound people make while doing dishes or walking slowly through a quiet house releases a compound into your own body that tells it, in the language of molecules, to open, to soften, to slow. You have been self-medicating with sound your entire life and never once needed a prescription. Everything around you right now has a note, not a note you could easily hear, not a note you might recognize if it were played on a piano, but a frequency at which it naturally wants to vibrate, a resonant frequency determined by its mass, its density, its shape, its material, the glass on your nightstand, the walls of the room, the bones of your hands, resting wherever they are resting. Each one has a pitch at which it responds more readily than any other, a note the universe might play it if the universe were in the mood to play. The fact, plainly, every physical object has one or more natural resonant frequencies determined by its physical properties, at which it vibrates with maximum amplitude when driven by an external force at that frequency, a principle exploited in engineering, music, and medical imaging. There is something quietly companionable about that. The idea that every object in the room with you tonight is not simply inert, not simply matter sitting still in the dark, but is carrying, somewhere in its physical structure, a note it knows how to sing. The world is full of instruments that have never been played. You are surrounded, always, by potential music that simply hasn't been invited yet. There are places in the universe so empty that the concept of sound does not apply to them. Not quiet, not hushed, not even silent in the way a library is silent or a snowfall is silent. Those are still places with air, still places where a vibration could, in principle, find a medium to move through. The void between galaxies has none of that. No molecules, no medium, nothing for a wave to travel through. Sound, in the truest sense of the word, cannot exist there. And yet astronauts returning from even low Earth orbit, a place that barely qualifies as this kind of emptiness, report that the silence of space is unlike anything they encountered on Earth. The fact, plainly, sound requires a physical medium, gas, liquid, or solid, through which pressure waves can propagate. The intergalactic medium is so diffuse that it is effectively a vacuum, making the transmission of sound waves physically impossible across the vast spaces between galaxies. The silence between galaxies is not peaceful the way sleep is peaceful. It is a different category of thing entirely, an absence so complete it has no human equivalent, which is perhaps why the sounds around you right now, however small, however ordinary, feel like something worth noticing. The hum of a refrigerator, the sound of your own breathing. These are not nothing. They are evidence that you are somewhere, that there is a medium, that the world around you is dense enough with matter to carry a wave. Two people are having a conversation. Perhaps they are old friends, comfortable with each other in the way that takes years to build, the kind of comfort that allows for silence without awkwardness, that makes even disagreements feel like something that will resolve. And as they talk, something is happening in their brains that neither of them knows about. The electrical activity in their neural tissue, the rhythmic oscillations that underlie thought and attention and understanding, is beginning to shift, to align, the waves of one brain beginning to resemble the waves of the other. The fact, plainly, research using EEG and fMRI by Uri Hasson and colleagues at Princeton found that neural oscillations in conversational partners tend to synchronize a phenomenon called neural coupling, with greater synchrony correlating with better communication and comprehension between speaker and listener. Voices carry more than information. They carry a kind of invitation, a rhythmic, acoustic signal that, if received openly, if listened to genuinely, begins to actually synchronize two nervous systems. Two separate brains, enclosed in two separate skulls, moving through the world independently, brought into alignment by the simple act of speaking and listening to each other. Every real conversation is, underneath the words, a kind of quiet becoming similar, a temporary merging, at the level of waves. In the 6th century before the Common Era, a Greek philosopher sat with a patient who could not sleep. He did not prescribe anything. He did not recommend rest or herbs or the avoidance of certain foods. He listened first, and then he prescribed music, specific modes, specific rhythms, chosen for their effect on what he called the harmonics of the soul. Pythagoras believed that health was a form of internal harmony, and that the right sounds could restore it. His followers called this practice harmonia. The fact, plainly, ancient Greek sources, including Iamblichus's Life of Pythagoras, record that Pythagoras used specific musical modes and rhythms as therapeutic interventions for emotional and physical complaints, representing one of the earliest documented systems of music therapy in Western history. He was working without the tools to explain what he observed, without EEG or cortisol assays or peer review, and yet what he observed was real enough to be passed forward, refined, expanded, and eventually confirmed by methods he could not have imagined. Sometimes knowledge arrives before its explanation. Sometimes people simply notice, carefully and honestly, what music does to a human being at the end of a difficult day. And then they pass that noticing forward, across 25 centuries, to here. Sprinkle a fine powder onto a metal plate. Make it even. Make it still. Now draw a bow across the edge of the plate, the way you might draw a violin bow, slowly and steadily, at a single point. The powder begins to move. Not randomly, not chaotically. It migrates away from the areas of maximum vibration and toward the areas of minimum vibration, the nodes, and there it settles into shapes. Precise, geometric, symmetrical shapes, concentric rings, stars, mandalas, lattices of extraordinary regularity. The sound made visible, the invisible order of vibration, written in powder on a plate. The fact, plainly, Chladni figures, first systematically demonstrated by Ernst Chladni in the late 18th century, are the geometric patterns formed by particulate matter on a vibrating surface. The patterns reflect the nodal lines of the plate's vibrational modes and change predictably with frequency. Sound is not chaos. At its foundation, in the mathematics that govern how waves behave, there is structure, pattern, a hidden geometry that the powder reveals simply by going where the wave tells it to go. When music feels ordered, when it feels like it makes sense even before you understand it, some part of that feeling may be the brain recognizing this, recognizing that beneath the sound, there is pattern. And pattern means this was made, this was shaped, someone or something intended this. Even now, while you rest, while your eyes are closed and your breathing is slow, and the day is somewhere behind you where it cannot reach, your brain is working, not frantically, not with the urgent, leaping quality of daytime thought, gently. And part of what it is doing, quietly and continuously, is monitoring the sounds around you, sorting them, deciding which ones matter and which ones do not. The refrigerator, hum, known, stable, safe. The distant sound of traffic, familiar, rhythmic, not alarming. A creak of the building settling, assessed, categorized, released. Your sleeping brain is a patient, tireless guardian, sorting the acoustic world so that you do not have to wake up to do it yourself. The fact, plainly. Research in sleep science has established that the auditory system remains partially active during sleep, particularly during lighter sleep stages, with the sleeping brain demonstrating differential responses to stimuli, showing larger neural responses to novel or personally significant sounds compared to familiar or irrelevant ones. You are never fully unguarded. Even in your deepest rest, something in you is listening, not anxiously, not effortfully, but with the steady, automatic care of a system that has been doing this job for as long as humans have slept. You can let it do its work. You do not need to help. The listening is already happening. You only need to rest inside it, the way you might rest inside a house during a storm, held, sheltered, heard. Somewhere in a valley, on an evening like this one, a wooden instrument is hanging in the wind. No one put it there intentionally. There is no musician. There is no audience. Just the instrument, an Aeolian harp, its strings stretched across a frame and the air moving through it. And from that encounter between air and string, something emerges that could not have been predicted. A chord. A shifting, evolving, unplanned sound that changes as the wind changes, that rises and falls with the weather, that no human hand is shaping and no human mind is composing. Music made by physics alone. The fact plainly. The Aeolian harp produces sound through vortex, shedding a fluid dynamics phenomenon in which wind flowing past a stretched string creates alternating vortices that induce vibration at the string's resonant frequency, producing tones that vary with wind speed and can include multiple harmonics simultaneously. The wind does not know it is making music. The string does not know it is singing. And yet something emerges from their encounter that a human ear recognizes as beautiful, that a human nervous system receives as soothing, as meaningful, as something that sounds like intention, even in the total absence of it. Perhaps beauty does not require intention. Perhaps the universe makes it anyway, in the meeting of simple things, when the conditions are right. Somewhere in the deep Pacific, moving slowly through water so cold it carries the memory of glaciers, the largest animal that has ever lived on Earth opens its mouth, not to feed, not in distress, simply to call. The sound that emerges is below the range of human hearing, a deep, slow pulse that travels outward through the water like a long, patient breath. If you could hear it, it would not feel violent or overwhelming. It would feel, researchers say, like something immense simply announcing that it exists, that it is here, that the ocean contains it, and the ocean is large enough to hold such a thing and still have room. The fact, plainly. Blue whale calls typically range from 10 to 40 hertzes below the threshold of human hearing, and have been measured at source levels up to 188 decibels, making them the loudest sounds produced by any animal, detectable by hydrophones at distances exceeding 1,600 kilometers under favorable conditions. The loudest living voice on Earth is one you have never heard. It passes through you without your knowing, through the water in your cells, through the fluid in your inner ear, and leaves no trace that your consciousness can catch. The largest creature that has ever existed is singing in a frequency your body cannot register. And yet, it is singing. Right now, in some ocean, something ancient and enormous is sending its voice across hundreds of miles of dark water. And somewhere, another ancient enormous thing is listening. Even as you rest right now, your ears have not closed. There is no lid, no muscle that draws a curtain over the entrance to the cochlea. The world continues to arrive. And what the sleeping brain does with that arrival is something that continues to interest researchers because it is not nothing, and it is not everything. It is a quiet, selective kind of processing, a sorting. And within that sorting, there is one category of sound the sleeping brain treats with particular and consistent attention: your own name, the fact, plainly. EEG studies have demonstrated that the sleeping brain produces measurably larger event-related potentials in response to hearing one's own name compared to other names, even during established sleep stages, suggesting the brain maintains a degree of self-relevant auditory processing throughout sleep. Your name is not just a word. It is the sound that has meant you, specifically you, for your entire conscious life. It is the sound that called you to dinner and to attention and to presence and to love. And your brain has learned, over all those years, to treat it as categorically different from other sounds, as a signal that requires at least a moment of consideration, even in sleep. Even now, some part of you is listening for the sound of being called, and finding, in the quiet, that no one is calling, that you are allowed, tonight, to simply rest. In the highlands of Tibet, in the long stone corridors of certain monasteries, a monk has been chanting for 3 hours. His voice is steady. It has been steady for a long time. The repetition is not monotony, it is something more like groove, like the worn path through a garden that becomes the path precisely because it has been walked so many times. And what is happening in his body as he chants is not simply discipline or devotion. His cortisol levels are measurably lower than they were when he began. His heart rate variability, a marker of nervous system flexibility and resilience, has shifted in a direction associated with calm. The fact, plainly. Multiple studies measuring physiological markers in practitioners of extended vocal meditation, including chanting and toning, have found significant reductions in salivary cortisol, decreases in heart rate, and shifts in heart rate variability, consistent with parasympathetic nervous system activation during and following sustained vocalization. The monks were not waiting for neuroscience to confirm what they had already found. They found it through practice, through the patient, repeated experience of what a sustained voice does to a body over time. They built entire traditions around what they observed, and what they observed was real. The body does not distinguish between a sacred chant and a scientific protocol. It responds to the vibration. It responds to the rhythm. It responds to the simple, ancient fact of a voice continuing, continuing, continuing. A child asks why the sky is blue, and someone who loves them says, because of the way light scatters. But here is a quieter question, one that rarely gets asked. Why does distant thunder feel different from close thunder? Not just louder or softer, actually different in character, in quality, in what it does to the body. Because close thunder contains high frequencies that the air absorbs over distance. By the time thunder reaches you from far away, those sharp edges have been smoothed. What arrives is mostly low frequency, a deep, rolling resonance that the body receives less as alarm and more as something vast and slow and strangely comforting. The fact, plainly, high-frequency sound waves are attenuated more rapidly by air absorption than low-frequency waves, a phenomenon described by the atmospheric absorption coefficient, which is why distant thunder loses its sharp crack and arrives as a low, rolling rumble, with frequencies below 100 Hz dominant at distances greater than a few kilometers. Storms at a distance are their own kind of lullaby. The sky doing something enormous, and the distance translating it into something the body can receive as rumble rather than alarm. This is why people fall asleep to storm recordings. Not despite the thunder, but because of what distance does to it, the way it arrives softened, low, as evidence that something powerful is happening somewhere else. And you are here, inside, and the walls are holding, and the distance is doing its patient work of smoothing every sharp edge before it reaches you. In the spring, when the flowers open and the air carries their particular sweetness, something is happening at the level of physics that is easy to miss. A bee lands on a flower or hovers just above it, and its wings beat. The frequency of that beating, somewhere between 200 and 400 times per second depending on the species, produces a vibration, and the flower, whose anthers are built to respond to exactly this range of frequency, releases its pollen, not passively. Actively, the vibration shaking the pollen loose in a process called buzz pollination, a mechanical conversation between insect and plant, written in a shared frequency neither of them chose. The fact, plainly, buzz pollination, or sonication, occurs when bees vibrate their flight muscles at specific frequencies, typically 200 to 400 hertzes, while in contact with or hovering near certain flowers, causing the anthers to release pollen through resonant vibration. This mechanism is used by approximately 8% of flowering plant species worldwide, including tomatoes and blueberries. A bee humming over a flower is not simply a pretty thing, it is a precise acoustic transaction, evolved over millions of years, in which the bee's body and the flower's body have come to speak the same frequency. The bee does not know this. The flower does not know this. And yet the pollen falls, and the bee carries it, and the world continues to make fruit and seed and next year's flowers. Music without musicians. Conversation without language. The hum of life, doing what it has always quietly done. On a hillside in Scotland, in 1977, a team of engineers built something strange and beautiful. They stretched metal strings across a wooden frame, longer than any harp ever played by hand, and positioned it so that the wind off the moorland would pass through it. What they were building was not meant to be played. It was meant to listen to the weather and respond. An Aeolian instrument on an architectural scale, tuned to the prevailing winds of that particular landscape. On certain days, in certain conditions, it could be heard from more than a mile away, not a melody exactly, but something that felt like one. The fact, plainly, the Aeolian harp tradition inspired the construction of large wind-activated acoustic installations in landscape art and acoustic ecology, including works that use natural wind patterns to produce site-specific tonal compositions that shift continuously with atmospheric conditions. There are people who have devoted their lives to listening to places, to hearing what a particular hillside, or a particular coastline, or a particular forest does to sound, and then building instruments that make that response audible to human ears. They call it acoustic ecology. And what they have found, consistently, is that every place on Earth has its own voice, shaped by its geology, its weather, its biological community, its particular relationship with wind and water. The place you are in right now has a voice. You have been living inside it, and perhaps have never quite thought of it that way. The Voyager 1 spacecraft, launched in September of 1977, is currently the most distant human-made object in existence. It crossed into interstellar space in 2012, beyond the heliosphere, into a region where the sun's influence fades and the vast quiet between stars begins. It carries, bolted to its side, a 12-inch gold-plated copper disc. On that disc, encoded in the grooves the way music was once encoded in vinyl, are sounds. Sounds of earth, wind, rain, surf, a human heartbeat, greetings in 55 languages, music from a dozen cultures, the sound of a mother speaking softly to her child. The fact, plainly, the Voyager Golden Record, designed by a committee chaired by Carl Sagan, contains 115 images and a variety of sounds, including natural earth sounds, music, and spoken greetings in 55 languages, and is currently traveling through interstellar space aboard Voyager 1 at approximately 17 kilometers per second. We sent our voices out beyond the solar system, not because anyone was likely to hear them, not with any reasonable expectation of reply, but because it felt important, because it felt true to let the universe know that something here had learned to make music and wanted to share it. The record is out there right now, in the cold dark between stars, carrying a mother's voice and the sound of rain, and a Beethoven string quartet and a Navajo night chant, moving at 17 kilometers per second through the silence between everything. The most patient message ever sent. Walk barefoot into a forest sometime, when the light is low and the air is cool and the canopy is still. You may notice that the forest sounds different from an open field. Sound does not travel far between the trees. It is absorbed by bark and moss and leaf litter and the irregular surfaces of 10,000 branches at 10,000 angles. The forest does not carry sound outward, it holds it close. It creates an acoustic enclosure, a room without walls, a space where the sounds of the forest stay in the forest and the sounds of the world outside remain outside. The trees, without intending it, have built a shelter from noise. The fact, plainly, forests function as natural acoustic barriers. Vegetation absorbs, reflects, and scatters sound waves. With dense woodland capable of reducing sound levels by 6 to 8 decibels per 100 meters, a phenomenon studied in environmental acoustics and urban planning as natural noise mitigation. There is a word in Japanese komorebi for the particular quality of light filtering through leaves. There should be a word, in every language, for the particular quality of sound in a forest. The way the trees take the noise of the world and hold it, soften it, dissolve it into something that barely reaches you by the time it arrives. The way a forest, simply by being itself, simply by having bark and moss and the irregular geometry of branches, creates the conditions for a kind of quiet that the open world cannot quite provide. In the beginning of any piece of music, before a single note is played, there is a moment. An orchestra has settled. The conductor has raised the baton. The audience has, without being asked, fallen silent. And in that collective, held breath, something is already happening. The brain, anticipating sound, has already begun to prepare. Dopamine, the compound associated with reward and pleasure, begins to rise in the anticipation of what is coming, before a single vibration has entered the air. The pleasure of music begins before the music does. The fact, plainly. Research by Anne Blood and Robert Zatorre at McGill University found that musical anticipation, the expectation of an emotionally significant musical passage, triggers dopamine release in the brain's reward circuitry before the passage arrives, suggesting that musical pleasure involves predictive processing as well as response to actual sound. You have been moved by music before it started playing. The brain does not wait for experience to begin feeling. It reaches forward. It anticipates. It begins to receive the gift before the gift has been given, because it has learned, from a lifetime of listening, that something beautiful is coming. This is what it means to know a piece of music well. Not simply to recognize it, but to carry it inside you completely enough that even the silence before it begins is already, in some way, full. In the 1860s, a printer and inventor in Paris, named Édouard Léon Scott de Martinville, built a machine with a horn, a bristle, and a rotating cylinder coated in soot. Sound entered the horn. The bristle, responding to the pressure waves, scratched a trace into the soot. He called it the phonautograph, the voice writer. He was not trying to play sound back. He was trying to see it, to make it visible, to turn the invisible wave into a line on paper that could be studied and understood. And so the first recording of a human voice was made not to be heard, but to be seen. It was a scientist looking for a picture and accidentally preserving a ghost. The fact, plainly. Édouard Léon Scott de Martinville's phonautograph, patented in 1857, created visual representations of sound waves on soot-coated paper or glass, a recording made on April 9, 1860. later digitally converted to audio by researchers at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, is currently the oldest known recording of a human voice. He never heard what he recorded. He looked at the line in the soot and saw information. He never knew he had caught something that would reach forward nearly a century and a half, to arrive in someone's ears as a voice, thin and wavering and unmistakably human, singing a few bars of a French folk song on an April morning in 1860. He was trying to understand sound. He ended up preserving a person. The two things, it turns out, are not so different. Bring your attention, gently, to the particular shape of your mouth right now. The soft architecture of it, the curve of the palate, the position of the tongue, the particular dimensions of the space between your teeth and the back of your throat. Now consider that every vowel sound you have ever produced has been shaped by exactly this architecture, and no other. When you say the word home, or the word warm, or the word open, the sound that emerges has passed through a resonant chamber that belongs to you alone. Your skull is your instrument. Your face is the body of it. Every word you have ever spoken has been filtered through the specific geometry of you. The fact, plainly, vowel sounds are distinguished primarily by their formant frequencies, resonant peaks in the vocal tract's frequency response, which are determined by the shape and dimensions of the oral and pharyngeal cavities, making each person's vowel production acoustically unique, even when producing identical phonemes. Language feels like it belongs to everyone, and it does, in its meanings, its grammar, its shared cargo of reference and intention. But the sound of it, the actual acoustic event that carries language from one person to another, is always particular, always individual. Every time someone has heard you speak, they have heard something no one else in the world can produce, not an approximation of you. The actual sound of your specific body, shaped into meaning, sent out into the air. In a hospital, late at night, a technician places a probe against a patient's chest. No incision, no radiation, just sound, a focused pulse of ultrasound, far above the range of human hearing, sent through the skin and into the body. The pulse reaches the heart. Some of it passes through. Some of it bounces back from the walls of the chambers, from the valves opening and closing, from the moving surface of blood itself. And from those echoes, a picture assembles on a screen. A living heart, seen from the outside, through sound alone. The fact, plainly. Echocardiography uses ultrasound waves, typically in the 2 to 18 MHz range, that reflect off cardiac structures with different acoustic impedances, producing real-time images of the heart's anatomy and function without ionizing radiation or surgical access. Sound can see. Given the right frequency, the right medium, the right receiver, sound can reach inside a body and return with a picture of what is happening there. This is what dolphins do with water and fish. This is what bats do with air and insects. And this is what medicine does with human tissue. With nothing more exotic than vibration, the same fundamental phenomenon as a voice, or a bell, or rain on a window, simply pitched far beyond what any ear can catch. In a garden in Austria, in the early 19th century, a nightingale was singing. Franz Schubert may or may not have been listening, historians are uncertain. But nightingales were singing across Europe, as they had always sung, as they will always sing for as long as nightingales exist. And what the nightingale was doing, in its particular and unrepeatable way, was something that takes a lifetime. Young nightingales begin with simple phrases. Over years, through listening and practice and the slow accumulation of vocal experience, the song grows more complex. An older nightingale sings with a richness and elaboration that a young one has not yet earned. The fact, plainly, nightingales are known for their exceptionally complex and variable songs. Male nightingales have repertoires of up to 200 distinct song types, and research has shown that song complexity increases with age and experience, with older males producing more elaborate and varied vocalizations than younger ones. A voice is never finished. This is something worth holding tonight, quietly, without urgency. Whatever you have managed to say, or sing, or express in your life so far, the voice that carries it is still becoming. Still capable of new phrases, new ranges, new forms of expression that the younger version of you had not yet earned. The nightingale does not retire its song. It simply keeps adding to it, slowly, for as long as it lives. There are sounds that help you remember. Not any sound-specific ones. Sounds present during learning that, when heard again during sleep, can act as a cue, a gentle signal to the consolidating brain that something stored nearby is worth keeping. Researchers have played specific tones to sleeping participants, tones that were paired with specific memories during waking hours, and found that the memories associated with those tones were retained more strongly the next morning than memories that received no such acoustic nudge during sleep. The fact, plainly, targeted memory reactivation. The presentation of learning-associated acoustic cues during slow-wave sleep has been shown in multiple studies to selectively enhance memory consolidation for the paired information, with participants demonstrating better next-day recall for cued versus uncued memories. Sleep is an active participant in memory, not a passive rest between the days when real things happen, but a process, a biological commitment to deciding what matters enough to keep. And sound, even during sleep, even during the hours when you believe you are simply absent from your own life, can reach into that process and gently tip the scales. The lullabies that were sung to you, the music that played during the happiest moments, they may have done more than comfort you. They may have helped you remember. In certain communities across the world, in parts of West Africa, in indigenous communities of the Pacific Northwest, in villages in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, there is a practice that has no precise equivalent in English. Before sleep, voices join, not in performance, not directed at any audience, simply joining, humming, or toning, or singing simple repeated phrases until the group finds a shared resonance, a frequency that several voices can sustain together. And in that sustained shared frequency, something happens to individual nervous systems that does not happen when a person simply goes to sleep alone. The boundary between self and group softens, gently, at exactly the threshold between waking and rest. The fact, plainly, communal singing before sleep is documented across numerous traditional cultures and has been studied in the context of social bonding and physiological synchrony. Research on group singing has found that singers' heart rates synchronize during shared vocal performance, mediated in part by phrased breathing patterns. There is an older way of going to sleep, one that most of the modern world has quietly set aside. Not alone, not in silence, but held inside a shared sound that carries everyone across the threshold together. We have replaced it with other things, some of them good, some of them merely loud. But the impulse has not gone away entirely. It shows up in the radio left on for company, in the podcast, playing softly in the dark, in the voice of this narration now, keeping you company at the edge of sleep. The word lullaby has been traveling through languages for a very long time. Its origins are genuinely disputed, which is itself a kind of wonder, that a word so common, so universally understood, so deeply embedded in the experience of being human, has edges blurry enough that linguists still reach different conclusions about where it came from. One thread traces it toward the Hebrew Lilith, a figure of the ancient night, and a tradition of singing to hold the dark at bay. Another finds its roots simply in the sounds of the song itself, the repeated, soothing syllables that have no meaning but their cadence. The fact, plainly, the etymology of lullaby is genuinely uncertain. Proposed origins include the Hebrew name Lilith combined with bai, Middle English lullen meaning to soothe, and the onomatopoeic quality of the syllables lul and by themselves, with no consensus reached among etymologists. What is certain is that the word exists in every language, in some form. Every culture that has ever had children has had a word for the song that carries them towards sleep. The melody changes, the language changes. The specific syllables are different in every corner of the world, but the gesture voice, directed at a small sleeping face, in the dark, at the edge of rest. That gesture has not changed. It is as old as our species. It is one of the first things we taught ourselves to do, and we have not stopped doing it since. Somewhere in a building near you, perhaps in this building, perhaps on a floor above or below, someone is sleeping. And while they sleep, they are making a sound, not snoring necessarily, simply breathing the slow, rhythmic, almost musical tide of inhalation and exhalation. And that sound, if it reaches you, does something specific. The brain registers rhythmic, regular, human-adjacent sound as a safety signal, not an alarm, not a call for attention, evidence of proximity, evidence of another warm body nearby, breathing, continuing, alive. The presence of another sleeper's breath is one of the oldest forms of acoustic comfort the human animal knows. The fact, plainly, the acoustic characteristics of another person's slow, rhythmic breathing, typically 12 to 20 cycles per minute, during relaxed wakefulness, slower in sleep, fall within the frequency range and temporal pattern that research associates with reduced autonomic arousal in listeners, consistent with the acoustic safety signal hypothesis in attachment theory. Before walls, before rooms, before the privacy that modern life has made both gift and occasional loneliness, humans slept together, in groups, with the breath of others as a constant, low, reassuring acoustic backdrop. The sound meant, we are all still here. Nothing has disturbed us. The night is safe enough that everyone is still breathing slowly. You can hear, even now, in the way a sleeping stranger's breath affects you, the long echo of a much older arrangement, one in which no one went to sleep entirely alone. In a physics laboratory in 1989, a single atom was photographed for the first time. Hans Damelt and his colleagues trapped a single barium ion in an electromagnetic field, illuminated it with a laser, and photographed the light it scattered. A single atom, visible to the naked eye as a tiny blue dot in a photograph. And what the photograph also implied, what it quietly held alongside the visible wonder of it, was this: that atom was vibrating. Every atom vibrates. At temperatures above absolute zero, which is to say, at every temperature that has ever existed anywhere a living thing has been, every atom in existence is in motion, oscillating at frequencies determined by its mass and its bonds with neighboring atoms. The fact, plainly, atomic vibration, the oscillation of atoms around their equilibrium positions in a solid or molecule, occurs at frequencies in the terahertz range and is a fundamental expression of thermal energy. At room temperature, atoms in a typical solid vibrate billions of times per second, and only at absolute zero, minus 273.15 degrees Celsius, would this motion theoretically cease entirely. Everything vibrates. The chair beneath you, the walls around you, the air between you and everything else in the room. The atoms in your fingertips are oscillating right now, at frequencies so high they are incomprehensible. You are not still, even when you are perfectly still. You are vibrating, down to your smallest components, at the frequency of the temperature of being alive. The universe has never, in its entire existence, been silent. Not once, not even close. Think of a voice you love. Not a famous voice, not a voice from a recording. The voice of someone specific, someone whose face you can bring to mind without effort. Someone whose laugh you can hear in your memory as clearly as if they were in the room. Now notice what happens in your body when you bring that voice to mind. A small release somewhere, a softening. Something that is not quite a smile but lives in the same neighborhood. That is not sentiment. That is chemistry. The fact, plainly, research published in Psychological Science found that hearing a familiar, caring voice, particularly a maternal voice, produces rapid decreases in salivary cortisol and increases in urinary oxytocin in study participants, with effects comparable in magnitude to physical contact, occurring within minutes of voice exposure. A voice you love is a biological event. It changes the composition of your blood. It shifts the balance of compounds in your body away from stress and towards something that researchers call, in their measured clinical language, affiliation, and that you and I might simply call comfort. The person whose voice does this to you does not need to be in the room. They do not need to be speaking to you directly. Simply the sound of them, carried on air or memory, is enough to begin the chemistry of being held. Sound waves, once made, do not simply stop. They diminish. They spread. They lose energy to the medium through which they travel, transferred into heat, into the vibration of walls and furniture and atmosphere, into the trillion small transactions of physics that gradually reduce a sound to something below the threshold of any instrument's detection. But the energy does not vanish. It transforms. It disperses into the world in forms too subtle to follow. Somewhere in the physics of the universe, the first sound any human being ever made, a cry, a breath, a wordless call, still exists in some transformed, infinitely attenuated form. The fact, plainly, the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. The energy of a sound wave is progressively converted into thermal energy through viscous losses and molecular interactions. But the total energy is conserved, meaning sound's energy persists in transformed form indefinitely. Nothing you have ever said has been truly lost. The words, yes, the specific pattern of compression and rarefaction that carried your voice across a room on a particular Tuesday afternoon, that is gone as a sound, as something anyone could hear or record. But the energy of it is somewhere still, changed beyond recognition, dispersed into the fabric of the world. Every kindness ever spoken, every lullaby ever sung, every name ever called out across a field to bring someone home, all of it, still out there, still part of the total, still real. Hold your hand near your ear for a moment, not touching, just close. Feel, or imagine feeling, the warmth there, the small, curved architecture of cartilage that has been quietly gathering the world for your entire life. Inside that structure, past the canal and the drum, is a chamber so small it would fit on the tip of your finger, and yet so intricately formed that it has taken evolution hundreds of millions of years to arrive at its current shape. It is coiled, spiral, 2.5 turns, tapering inward, like a nautilus shell reduced to the scale of a pea. The fact, plainly, the cochlea, the spiral-shaped, fluid-filled sensory organ of the inner ear, completes approximately 2.5 turns in humans and is strikingly similar in geometry to the logarithmic spiral of a nautilus shell, a shape that appears repeatedly in biological structures and is mathematically described by the golden ratio. You carry a nautilus inside your head, the same spiral that appears in the chambers of a shell pulled from the seafloor, the same geometry that shows up in the seeds of a sunflower and the arms of certain galaxies. That shape is inside you, right now, translating the world into signals your brain can use. The universe has a preferred shape for certain problems, and the problem of gathering and processing sound is one of them. You are built in your most intimate listening places, according to a pattern the ocean has been using for 500 million years. In a cave in Slovenia, a researcher holds a small object under a lamp. It is a fragment of bone, the femur of a cave bear, with 4 holes bored through it in a line. The holes are not random. They are spaced with an intention that took the researcher time to recognize, and then could not be unrecognized. They are the finger holes of a flute, 40,000 years old, give or take, made by a human hand in the dark of a cave during the last ice age, when glaciers covered much of the continent and the world outside was cold and vast and mostly empty of people. The fact, plainly, the Divier Babe flute, a cave bear femur fragment found in Slovenia in 1995, is dated to approximately 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, and is considered by many researchers to be one of the oldest known musical instruments, though its artificial origin remains debated among paleoanthropologists. Someone made music before they made bread, before agriculture, before writing, before cities, Before anything we recognize as civilization in its modern form, someone sat down and carefully bored holes in a bone and put it to their lips and played. They were not doing it to record anything. They were not doing it for an audience that would remember. They were doing it because something in them needed to, and because the need was old enough and strong enough and important enough to justify the patience it took. The need has not changed. It simply found new instruments. There is a place in the forest where the sound changes. Not dramatically, you might not notice it if you were not listening for it. But step from an open meadow into the tree line and the acoustic world shifts. In the open, sound spreads in every direction and fades quickly. Under the canopy, it is contained, reflected, broken up by the irregular surfaces of bark and branch and leaf. And in different spaces within the forest, a clearing, a dense thicket, the edge of a stream, the acoustic character is different again, specific to that geometry, that arrangement of surfaces, that particular community of trees. The fact, plainly, acoustic ecology, a field pioneered by Canadian composer R. Murray Schafer documents how different natural environments produce distinct soundscapes, with research showing that the acoustic properties of a forest vary significantly based on species composition, density, understory structure, and topography, creating habitat-specific sonic signatures. Every place has its own voice, not metaphorically, measurably, documentably, in frequencies and reverb times, and the specific way sound bounces off the particular surfaces of that particular space. The forest you know best, wherever it is, the one you walked through as a child, or the one near where you live now, or the one you remember from a single afternoon that somehow stayed with you, has a sound that exists nowhere else on Earth. You have been carrying it, without knowing it, all this time. In the North Pacific, a hydrophone array picks up a signal. It is a whale call, but not quite like the others recorded from this species. The frequency is slightly different. The structure is familiar but altered in ways that suggest the caller learned its song somewhere else, from someone else, in a different part of the ocean. And when researchers check their records, they find it. This melody, this particular variation, began appearing in Australian waters 7 years ago, spread westward across the Pacific, and has now, through a chain of individual whales listening and learning and adapting, arrived here. The fact, plainly, research published in Current Biology by Ellen Garland and colleagues, documented the cultural transmission of humpback whale songs across the South Pacific, with new song types originating in one population and spreading rapidly eastward through contact and acoustic learning between populations, a form of non-genetic cultural transmission spanning ocean basins. Whales have culture. Not in the diminished sense, that word sometimes gets used for animals, not just behavior, but something that genuinely transmits through learning, that spreads through a community, that changes over time as new voices add to it. A melody born in Australian waters travels the Pacific through a chain of enormous, slow, singing creatures who heard something they found worth repeating, and repeated it, and passed it on. The ocean is full of traditions. The ocean has always been full of traditions. We simply did not have the instruments to know. Place your hand flat against your sternum for a moment, not searching for anything, just resting there, and breathe in slowly, then hum as you exhale the simplest, lowest note your voice finds without effort. Feel the vibration move into your hand. Feel it in your chest, your throat, the bones of your face. Now consider that this simple, ancient, effortless gesture is one of the first things a distressed human infant does when left alone. Before words, before the social machinery of crying fully engages, a small, involuntary hum, a self-directed sound, the body reaching for its own comfort before it knows how to ask. The fact, plainly, spontaneous, self-directed vocalization in infants, including humming and tonal sounds, produced in the absence of social interaction, has been documented in developmental research as an early form of self-regulation, appearing in typically developing infants from approximately 2 to 4 months of age, and persisting as a self-soothing behavior across the lifespan. Humming yourself calm is not a coping strategy you learned. It is something you arrived with, something the body discovered in your earliest weeks, before you had language or memory or any framework for understanding what you were doing. You were simply a small, warm thing, finding that the sound of your own voice, directed inward, made the world easier to be in. All these years later, you still have that. You never lost it. It has simply been waiting, patiently, for the moments when you need it most. On a summer evening in ancient Greece, a boy is being taught to read. Not silently, there was no such thing as silent reading in the ancient world, not in any common sense. He reads aloud, as everyone did, because reading was understood to be an acoustic act. The text came alive through voice. Meaning was not accessed through the eye alone, but through the whole resonant system of breath and throat and skull and air. The library was a place of many voices. The scholar's study was a place of one voice, speaking to itself, making the marks on the page into something that could be heard. The fact, plainly, silent reading, reading without subvocalizing or producing audible sound, was rare and considered remarkable in the ancient and medieval world. Street. Augustine famously noted his wonder at seeing Ambrose of Milan reading silently in the 4th century CE, suggesting that silent reading was unusual enough to be worth remarking upon. Reading was once a sounding act. Words were not fully words until they were spoken. The page was not the destination. It was an instruction, a score, waiting for a voice to bring it into the world. Something of that ancient understanding persists in the way a really good sentence feels different when you read it aloud. The way poetry arrives differently in the mouth than on the page. The way this, whatever is happening between these words and your mind right now, is always, in some sense, a voice reaching toward another voice, across whatever distance the medium requires. In the dark water below the continental shelves, where the pressure is immense and the temperature barely rises above freezing, creatures are communicating. Not with light, though, some do that too. With sound. Clicks, grunts, low moans, rapid sequences of pulses. The deep ocean, which we have long imagined as a realm of silence, is in fact one of the most acoustically complex environments on Earth, full of biological sound produced by fish and shrimp and cetaceans, and the geological activity of the seafloor itself. The silence was always a projection. We imagined it quiet because we could not hear it. The ocean was never consulted on the matter. The fact, plainly, passive acoustic monitoring of the deep ocean has revealed extraordinarily diverse biological soundscapes, including the snapping of pistol shrimp, low-frequency fish choruses, and the calls of deep-diving cetaceans, with researchers estimating that the majority of marine species produce sound as part of their behavioral repertoire, though most remain unstudied acoustically. The ocean has been making sound since before there were ears to hear it. Since before there were fish, even the geological processes of the seafloor have always produced vibration, and water has always carried it. The silence we attributed to the deep was always ours, not the ocean's. What we thought was emptiness was simply beyond our hearing. This is true of more things than the ocean. The world is generally louder and more full of communication than the limits of our perception allow us to know. The way a voice changes when its owner is sad is not subtle, not to a trained ear, and not even to an untrained one. The pitch drops slightly. The pace slows. The energy in the higher frequencies, the brightness and sparkle that characterizes an energized voice diminishes. The breath underneath the words becomes audible in a different way, and listeners, even very young children, even across language barriers, even hearing a recording of a voice in a language they do not speak, can detect grief or warmth or anxiety from tone alone before a single meaningful word has been understood. The fact, plainly. Research in affective prosody, the emotional information carried by vocal tone, independent of semantic content, has found that listeners can identify emotional states from vocal recordings with accuracy significantly above chants across different languages and cultures, suggesting a partially universal system of emotional vocal signaling. Your voice tells the truth even when your words are trying not to. Not because you are dishonest, but because the system that shapes your voice in response to your emotional state is older and faster and less subject to conscious editing than the system that chooses your words. This is why a certain kind of fine, flat, quiet, slightly slower than usual is never quite convincing to someone who loves you. They are hearing something your voice cannot help but say. Something older than language. Something that simply tells the truth. In the Tang dynasty, in 7th century China, physicians listened. Not with stethoscopes, those would not exist for another 1,000 years. They listened to the voice, to its quality, its pitch, its resonance, its strength. They listened to the breath, how it sounded, entering and leaving the body. What the voice revealed about what was happening in the organs, they understood the chest to contain. Sound was diagnostic. The body's voice was medical information, read the way a modern physician reads a chart. The fact, plainly, traditional Chinese medicine incorporated auscultation, the diagnostic, listening to a patient's voice, breathing, and bodily sounds as one of the 4 primary diagnostic methods, alongside observation, inquiry, and palpation, with specific vocal qualities associated with specific organ systems and patterns of imbalance. Ancient physicians knew that the body speaks. Not metaphorically, they meant it literally, and they were not wrong. The voice changes with illness, with fatigue, with stress, with the particular imbalances that precede diagnosed disease. Modern medicine has largely outsourced this listening to instruments. But the instruments are measuring the same thing the Tang physicians were trying to hear: the body's ongoing, involuntary report on its own condition. The body has always been narrating its own story. We have simply changed how we listen. There is a piece of music, you have heard something like it, even if you cannot name it, where the last chord simply refuses to resolve. It hangs there, sustained, neither arriving nor departing. In harmonic terms, it is called a suspension, a note held over from one chord into the next, creating a tension that the ear leans into, that the body leans into, that the entire listening system orients toward, with something between anticipation and longing. And then, when the resolution finally comes, when the note moves the single step it needed to move, the relief is physical, not just emotional. Something in the body releases that had been, without your awareness, held. The fact, plainly, musical tension and resolution, produced through harmonic suspension, melodic expectation, and rhythmic displacement, have been shown in psychoacoustic research to produce measurable physiological responses, including changes in skin conductance, heart rate, and respiratory pattern, with resolution producing a relaxation response distinct from the tension state. Music holds you and then releases you, and the release is a gift made possible only by the holding. The tension is not cruelty, it is preparation. The moment of resolution lands so softly, so completely, precisely because something in you has been gently, patiently leaning toward it. Rest, tonight, has a similar architecture. The day was the suspension, the long-held chord. And this right now, this growing quiet, is the resolution you have been moving toward since morning. Somewhere in a highland meadow, before the sun has fully cleared the eastern hills, a single bird begins, not loudly, not with any sense of announcement, simply a phrase, offered into the cool air, complete in itself. Then another phrase, then silence, then, from a different direction, an answer. Not an echo, a response, different in detail, similar in spirit. And slowly, over the next hour, as the light increases and the temperature rises and the meadow warms into the day, the number of voices multiplies until the air is full of overlapping song. Scientists call this the dawn chorus. It happens every morning on every continent where birds live. It has happened every morning for millions of years. The fact, plainly, the dawn chorus, the period of intensified birdsong occurring around sunrise, is documented across avian species worldwide. with research suggesting it functions in territory defense and mate attraction, and is driven partly by the acoustic advantages of cool morning air, which carries sound more efficiently due to reduced background noise and favorable temperature gradients. Every morning, the world is sung back into existence, not by one voice, not by any single intention, but by thousands of creatures responding to the light with the thing they know how to do, offering their phrase into the air, listening for what comes back, adjusting, continuing. The morning is always already full of music, before most of us have opened our eyes. The day begins in song. It always has. You simply sleep through most of it, and that is perfectly fine. The chorus does not require your witness to proceed. Consider the particular quality of the night around you right now. The way sound behaves differently after midnight than it does at noon. The way certain things become audible, that the busyness of the day covers over the refrigerator. The ticking of something you never notice when the television is on. The distant sound of a car moving through a wet street. The night does not create these sounds. The day simply masks them. And what the night reveals, in its quiet, is the acoustic truth of your particular place, the sounds that were always there, waiting beneath the noise of living, patient as the ground beneath a building. The fact, plainly, ambient noise levels in urban and suburban environments typically drop by 10 to 20 decibels between peak daytime hours and late night, a reduction that shifts the auditory scene dramatically, allowing sounds previously masked by daytime noise to become perceptible, a phenomenon studied in environmental acoustics and urban soundscape research. The night is not quieter because less is happening. It is quieter because the things that mask the quiet have stopped. The night reveals rather than creates. And what it reveals, this particular arrangement of small sounds that surrounds you right now, in this specific place, is the acoustic signature of your life, the refrigerator that belongs to you, the walls that belong to this building, the street outside that belongs to this neighborhood, this city, this geography, all of it saying, in the only language places have, you are here. This is where you are. You are home. In 1977, 2 spacecraft were launched, 11 days apart, into the darkness beyond the solar system. Each carried a golden record. Each record was designed to survive for 1 billion years longer than the Earth has left before the Sun expands to consume it. The contents were chosen with the knowledge that whoever found them might have no frame of reference for anything human. And yet the designers, scientists and musicians and linguists and artists chose to include music, not because music is the most efficient way to transmit information, but because it is the most honest way to transmit what it feels like to be alive. The fact, plainly, the Voyager Golden Records contain 90 minutes of music from cultures around the world, selected by a committee that included Carl Sagan and ethnomusicologist Alan Lomax, chosen to represent the acoustic diversity of human musical expression across cultures and historical periods, from Azerbaijani folk music to Bach to Chuck Berry. We sent music into the void because we could not think of anything truer to send. Not equations, though, we sent those too. Not architecture or language or mathematics. Music, the thing that happens when a human being takes breath and bone and the particular ache of being alive and turns it into organized sound and sends it outward, hoping something will hear. The Voyager record is the most honest message we have ever sent to anyone. It says, we were here, and this is what it felt like. And we wanted you to know, rest your awareness, gently, in the space just behind your eyes, not thinking about anything there, just resting, and consider that right now, the bones of your skull are vibrating, not dramatically, not perceptibly, but in the way all matter vibrates, in the way all solids carry the thermal energy of their temperature in the oscillation of their atoms. And the particular shape of your skull, its density and curvature, and the specific dimensions of its chambers means that it has a resonant frequency, a note that it would sing if something struck it at exactly the right pitch. The fact, plainly, the human skull has measurable resonant frequencies, typically in the range of 90 to 200 hertzes. depending on individual anatomy, a property studied in biomechanics, and relevant to understanding how the head responds to acoustic and mechanical vibration, including why certain low-frequency sounds are felt as well as heard. Your head is an instrument, not in the loose metaphorical sense people use when they mean someone is clever. Literally, physically, acoustically, an instrument. A resonant chamber with its own natural frequency, its own preferred note, and certain sounds, certain low, warm, sustained tones in the right range are not just heard by your skull, they are felt by it, received by it, recognized by it as something close to its own frequency, and responded to with a resonance that is entirely private, entirely physical, entirely yours. In the deep trenches of the Pacific, in places where the pressure would crush an unprotected human body in seconds, the water is not silent. It carries the sounds of the surface world, the low throb of distant shipping, the faint murmur of coastal surf, transmitted downward through thousands of meters of water. It carries the sounds of geological activity, the slow creaking of tectonic plates, hydrothermal vents releasing heated water in a low, continuous hiss. And it carries biological sound creatures that have never seen light, that have evolved in total darkness, that navigate and communicate and find their food entirely through vibration in the water around them. The fact plainly, passive acoustic recordings from ocean trenches, including the Mariana Trench conducted by NOAA researchers, have captured a complex soundscape including anthropogenic noise, cetacean calls, earthquakes, and biological sources, demonstrating that even the deepest parts of the ocean maintain a rich and continuous acoustic environment. The deepest place on Earth is full of sound. The place furthest from the surface, furthest from sunlight, furthest from anything the human body could survive, it is not silent. It is humming with the business of existence, with the deep, slow conversation of geology and biology and physics that has been going on down there since long before any human ear existed to hear it. There is no place on this planet that has ever been truly quiet. The planet is too alive for that. It has always been too alive for that. When a person dies, the last sense to leave is hearing. This is what hospice workers report, and what the physiology of dying supports. Vision dims, touch becomes uncertain, the sense of smell and taste fade early. But hearing, the cochlea, the auditory nerve, the brain's processing of sound persists longer than almost anything else. The dying hear the voices of the people they love. They hear the sounds of the room. They hear, in the final passage, the world continuing to exist around them. And that continuation is, perhaps, its own kind of comfort. The fact, plainly, clinical and neurophysiological research supports the observation that hearing is among the last senses to diminish during the dying process. Auditory brainstem responses have been recorded in patients in the final hours of life, and hospice care guidelines consistently recommend speaking to unresponsive dying patients on the basis that hearing may persist. Hearing does not abandon us. Out of all the ways the world reaches us, all the channels through which existence arrives and is registered, sound is the most faithful, the most persistent, the most patient. It stays when other senses have already departed for wherever senses go. And so the last thing a person knows of being alive is in many cases a voice, a familiar voice, or the sound of a room, or the quiet itself. Sound stays. Sound keeps its watch. Sound is the last thing the world whispers into a departing ear. A language exists that is entirely made of pitch, not just inflected by pitch, not just shaped by the rising and falling of intonation made of it, in the way that a building is made of its materials rather than merely decorated with them. In Mandarin Chinese, the word ma, spoken in a flat, high tone, means mother. Spoken with a rising tone, it means hemp. Spoken with a dipping tone, it means horse. Spoken with a falling tone, it means to scold. 4 different words, 4 different meanings, 4 different worlds, held apart only by the melody of the voice that speaks them. The fact, plainly, Mandarin Chinese is a tonal language with 4 lexical tones: flat, rising, dipping, and falling, plus a neutral tone, in which tone is a phonemically contrastive feature, meaning that pitch alone distinguishes words with entirely different meanings, a property shared by approximately 60 to 70% of the world's languages. In most of the world's languages, the melody of a word is its meaning. The music is not decoration, it is the message. This means that for the majority of human beings alive right now, speaking and singing are not entirely different activities. Every conversation carries a musical structure that is load-bearing, that holds meaning, that if altered, changes everything being said. Language, for most of the world, is already a form of song. The boundary we draw between speaking and singing may be a minority opinion, held mainly by languages that came to dominate by accident of history, not by nature. The Benedictine monks of the Abbey of Santo Domingo de Silos have been chanting since the 10th century. The same chants, handed forward, generation by generation, memorized not through notation primarily but through listening and repetition, and the living transmission of voice to voice across 1,000 years. In 1994, a recording of their chant was released commercially and became, unexpectedly, one of the best-selling classical recordings of the decade. Not because it was new, not because it was fashionable, because something in the sound of voices that have been doing this for 1,000 years reaches something in the listener that more recent music cannot quite find. The fact, plainly, Gregorian chant, the monophonic liturgical music of the Western Christian Church, was designed to exploit the long reverberation times of stone, Romanesque and Gothic church interiors, with melodic phrases timed to complement the acoustic decay of the space, creating a sonic architecture inseparable from the physical architecture that contains it. The chant and the stone were designed together. The melody was written for those particular walls, those particular vaulted ceilings, that particular way a sound in a stone room takes several seconds to fade. The monks who composed those melodies knew their space the way a hand knows a familiar object in the dark by feel, by the quality of the response, by listening for what the room gave back and writing more of what it received well. They were composing for an instrument the size of a cathedral, and the music still fits. Even as you rest right now, your breathing is doing something you have not asked it to do. When you listen to music or to a voice speaking slowly, in long, unhurried phrases, your respiratory system follows. Not because you have decided to breathe more slowly, not because you have remembered to, but because the body tracks rhythm with a precision that bypasses conscious intention entirely. And when the rhythm it is tracking slows, it slows with it. The breath is a follower, a patient, faithful, automatic follower of whatever rhythm the world offers it. The fact, plainly, respiratory entrainment, the synchronization of breathing rate to external rhythmic stimuli, including music, tempo, and speech rhythm, has been documented in multiple studies. With slow music below approximately 60 beats per minute, consistently associated with reductions in respiratory rate, consistent with parasympathetic nervous system activation. Your breath is following this voice right now. Not dramatically, you would not necessarily notice if asked, but in the slight lengthening of the exhale, in the small, unhurried pause before the next inhalation, in the way the body, given a slow enough rhythm to track, finds that rhythm and settles into it the way water settles into a vessel, taking the shape of what holds it, filling it completely, going still. You are not doing this. It is being done by something older than decision, something that has been synchronizing with the rhythms of the world since the first breath you ever took. There is a quality of silence that exists only at high altitude, not the silence of a room with good insulation, or the silence of a library after closing time. Something different, thinner, in a way that mirrors the thinner air itself. At altitude, there are fewer molecules for sound to travel through, and the sounds that do exist carry differently, dissipating more quickly, arriving more cleanly, without the low-frequency rumble that fills lower elevations. Mountaineers describe it as a silence that feels three-dimensional. That fills space rather than merely being the absence of sound. a silence that seems to have its own presence. The fact, plainly, at high altitudes, the reduced air density, lower atmospheric pressure, means fewer air molecules per unit volume, increases the rate of sound attenuation, and alters the acoustic properties of the environment, reducing background noise levels and changing how sounds propagate, contributing to the perceptual quality of alpine silence, reported by mountaineers and high-altitude researchers. There are different qualities of quiet, the way there are different qualities of light. The silence of a snowfall is not the same as the silence of a forest at midday, which is not the same as the silence of high altitude, which is not the same as the particular quiet of a room where someone you love is sleeping nearby. Each silence has its own texture, its own density, its own way of arriving. The quiet around you right now, this specific, particular quiet, belongs to this night, this place, this moment. It will not come again in exactly this form. It is worth receiving, gently, while it is here. Somewhere in the highlands of Ethiopia, before the written record begins, someone discovered that certain stones rang when struck. Not all stones, most stones, thud, absorb, give nothing back, but certain stones, certain compositions, certain thicknesses and shapes, when struck with another stone or a wooden implement, ring. They sustain. They produce a tone that carries across a valley, that echoes off a hillside, that sounds to the ear of a creature that has been listening to the world for long enough like something worth repeating. Lithophones, archaeologists call them, stone instruments, among the oldest musical instruments ever found. The fact, plainly, lithophones, musical instruments made from stones that produce tonal sounds when struck, have been found across multiple continents and cultures, with examples dating to the Neolithic period. The Vietnamese dan da, among the oldest known, dates to approximately 3,000 years ago, and suspected prehistoric examples exist in France and elsewhere. Before wood was carved, before clay was fired, before metal was smelted, there was stone that rang. Someone found it, and found that finding it mattered, and kept finding it, and taught someone else to find it. The impulse to make music did not wait for the right materials. It used what the world offered. It heard potential in a stone, the way other hands heard potential in a seed. The first instruments were already here, waiting in the hillsides, ringing quietly in the geological patience of the earth. Think of the last time you stood at the edge of the ocean. The sound of it, the particular layered complexity of it, is not simple. It is not one wave, not one frequency, not one source. It is the overlap of hundreds of waves at different stages of arrival, each one breaking slightly differently, each one producing a slightly different acoustic signature, the whole of it combining into something the brain receives as not chaos, but richness. The fractal complexity of a sound that repeats but never exactly repeats, that is consistent but never monotonous, that is, for reasons the body understands before the mind catches up, profoundly, reliably, almost universally soothing. The fact, plainly, ocean surf produces a broadband sound with fractal temporal structure, self-similar patterns of variation across multiple timescales, which research in psychoacoustics links to reduced cognitive load and attentional fatigue, with natural fractal soundscapes associated with faster physiological recovery from stress compared to artificial or urban noise environments. The ocean has been making this sound for 4 billion years. It was making it before any ear existed to receive it, before any nervous system had evolved to find it soothing. And yet when ears finally arrived, when creatures emerged who could hear and who could feel what hearing did to them, the ocean's sound was exactly the right kind of complex. Exactly the right kind of varied within consistency that a nervous system finds restful rather than alerting, as though the ocean and the ear were made for each other, across the long, patient accident of evolution. In a studio in Memphis, in 1954, a young man stepped up to a microphone. He had been in and out of the studio several times, recording songs that were competent, but somehow, not yet the thing everyone in the room could feel was possible but hadn't arrived. Then, between takes, during a break, he began to play something loose and unplanned. A song he knew, but played differently with a looseness. A slipping between rhythms that didn't belong to any single tradition. The engineer reached for the controls. Something was happening. That looseness, that slipping, that quality of being between things, rather than settled in any one thing, it turned out to be what the world had been waiting for. The fact, plainly. Sam Phillips, founder of Sun Records, described the recording of Elvis Presley's That's All Right in July 1954 as a spontaneous, unplanned performance that occurred between formal takes, a moment of musical play that Phillips recognized as a fusion of blues and country influences, creating something genuinely new, often cited as a foundational moment in the emergence of rock and roll. The most significant sounds are often unplanned, often arrived at sideways, through play, through the looseness that comes when the pressure to perform has briefly lifted and something genuine surfaces instead. The history of music is full of accidents that turned out to be the point, of moments where someone stopped trying to make the right sound and simply made a sound, and the right sound turned out to be that one, the unguarded moment. The thing that happens when the performance stops and the person begins. There is a frequency your body makes that you have never heard. Below the threshold of your own hearing, below what your ears can register, your body produces infrasound vibrations in the range below 20 Hz, generated by your heartbeat, your breathing, the movement of blood through vessels, the slow mechanical activity of organs doing their work. You are continuously emitting sound in a range you cannot perceive. The world around you is doing the same. The building you are in is doing the same. The earth beneath the building is doing the same. There is an entire acoustic world happening below the floor of your perception. The fact, plainly, the human body produces infrasound acoustic vibrations below 20 Hz through cardiac activity, respiratory movement, and gastrointestinal function. Infrasound is also generated by geological activity, atmospheric phenomena, ocean waves, and large structures, and while inaudible to human ears, can be detected by specialized microphones and has measurable physiological effects at sufficient intensities. You are broadcasting right now, not into any network, not toward any receiver, simply outward. The way all physical things broadcast the vibrations of their existence into the medium around them. You are making sound in frequencies your own ears cannot catch. The world around you is full of sound in frequencies your ears cannot catch. What you perceive as the acoustic world is a narrow slice, a small, well-lit room inside a much larger building that extends in every direction beyond what your instruments can reach. Hold the memory of a sound that made you feel, once, completely safe. Perhaps it was rain. Perhaps it was the low murmur of adults talking in the next room. When you were very small, the particular sound of other people being awake and present and unalarmed while you drifted toward sleep. Perhaps it was the sound of a car engine, a specific one, a familiar one, that meant someone you loved was home. Perhaps it was music, or a voice, or the sound of a fire. The specific content matters less than what it shares with every other sound in that category. It told your nervous system. In the acoustic language the nervous system understands, that you were not alone, that the world was occupied by people who knew where you were. The fact, plainly, research in developmental and clinical psychology has established the concept of acoustic safe signals sounds associated with safety and caregiving that become conditioned stimuli for parasympathetic nervous system activation. Through repeated pairing with states of security and comfort, a mechanism relevant to understanding why certain sounds retain their calming properties across the lifespan. That sound is still inside you. Whatever it was, it is still there, stored in the body's long, faithful memory of what safety felt like before you had words for safety. And on nights like this one, when you are still and the day is behind you and something soft is carrying you toward sleep, those sounds are close, not playing, necessarily, but present, available. The body knows what safety sounds like. It learned a long time ago. It has not forgotten a single note. Ancient stone circles were not built for looking at, or not only for looking at, not only for marking the solstice, or aligning with the stars, or whatever other astronomical purpose the researchers argue about on alternate Tuesdays. Some of them, Stonehenge among them, have acoustic properties that their builders almost certainly noticed and may have intended. Standing inside the circle, certain sounds behave strangely. Echoes arrive from unexpected directions. The stones create diffraction patterns that make a voice or a drum seem to come from everywhere at once. The circle becomes a room, an outdoor room, built from the landscape itself, with its own acoustic character. The fact, plainly, archaeoacoustic research by Rupert Till and Bruno Fazenda has demonstrated that Stonehenge, in its original complete configuration, would have produced measurable acoustic effects, including reverberation times of approximately 0.6 seconds and diffraction patterns that would have significantly altered the perception of sound within the circle, comparable in some respects to indoor acoustic environments. They built a room from stone, in the open air, on a plain, for reasons that included but were not limited to sound, a space where a voice, or a drum, or a chant would behave differently than it did in the open landscape around it, where the sound would be held, slightly, gathered, given a quality of presence that the open air could not provide. The impulse is so old, it predates writing, predates cities, predates almost everything we recognize as the infrastructure of civilization. The impulse to make a space where sound means something, to build a place that knows how to hold a voice. Your name is the oldest song anyone ever sang to you. Not a melody exactly, though it has its melody. The particular way the person who named you said it in your first weeks, the inflection they gave it, the warmth or the urgency or the tenderness that came with it in different moments. Before you understood it as a label, before you associated it with yourself as a concept, you knew it as a sound, a specific, recurring sound that reliably preceded the arrival of something good, a face, a warmth, a presence. Your name was a promise before it was a word. The fact, plainly, research in infant auditory perception has found that infants as young as 4.5 months preferentially orient toward their own name compared to other similarly stressed words, suggesting that name recognition develops well before the emergence of broader language comprehension, and that the name functions as a high-salience acoustic signal, with special status in early auditory processing. Decades lapse in a crowded room. Your name, spoken by a stranger, still makes you turn. Spoken by someone you love, it still does something different than any other word in any language. The brain has a place for it, a special, protected address that nothing else occupies. Your name is the sound the world uses when it means specifically you. And somewhere in the long memory of your nervous system, the oldest association still holds. That sound, that particular sequence of phonemes, has always meant someone is here. Someone sees you. Someone knows where you are. In the 16th century, a Venetian composer named Giovanni Gabrieli placed choirs in different parts of a cathedral, not all together at the front, separated some in the main choir loft, some in the galleries above the side aisles, some perhaps in the nave itself. And when they sang, the sound came from everywhere. It arrived from different directions at different moments, overlapping, echoing, combining in the center of the space into something that no single choir could produce. He was composing not just music but space, using the cathedral as an instrument, using distance as a compositional tool. The fact, plainly, Giovanni Gabrieli's polychoral compositions, particularly those written for street, Mark's Basilica in Venice, which he served as organist from 1585 until his death in 1612, exploited the basilica's multiple choir lofts and complex acoustic geometry to create spatial sound effects, with different musical groups placed in different locations to produce directional and antiphonal effects, establishing a tradition of spatial music composition. Space is part of the music. Distance is part of the music. the silence between sources, the slight delay of sound arriving from one direction and then another, all of it is compositional material. All of it is heard. All of it affects what the listener receives and how they receive it. Every space you have ever sat in silence in has been shaping the sound around you. The room you are in right now, its walls, its dimensions, its particular way of handling the small sounds of the night is part of what you are hearing. The room is always part of the music. Even as you rest right now, somewhere above you the atmosphere is singing. Not loudly, not in any range you could hear even if you were standing outside in the dark with your face turned upward. The atmosphere produces Schumann resonances, electromagnetic resonances in the cavity between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere, driven primarily by lightning strikes occurring somewhere on Earth at a rate of approximately 100 times per second. These resonances pulse at frequencies beginning near 7.83 Hz. They have been pulsing since the atmosphere formed. They will pulse for as long as the atmosphere remains. The fact plainly, Schumann resonances are global electromagnetic resonances in the Earth ionosphere cavity, with the fundamental frequency at approximately 7.83 Hz generated by worldwide lightning activity. They were predicted, theoretically, by physicist Winfried Otto Schumann in 1952 and confirmed by measurement shortly thereafter, and have been continuously monitored by researchers studying Earth's electromagnetic environment. The atmosphere has a heartbeat, not a metaphorical one, a measurable, consistent electromagnetic pulse at a frequency that happens to overlap with human brainwave activity in the alpha and theta ranges. The Earth's electromagnetic environment and the electrical activity of human brains occupy some of the same frequency territory. Whether this overlap is meaningful, or simply the coincidence of physics arriving at similar numbers for different reasons, scientists are genuinely uncertain. But the pulse is real. The atmosphere is pulsing right now, above everything, quietly, at a rate the instruments can measure and the body may, in some way that remains unclear, be receiving. The word resonance comes from the Latin resonare, to sound again, to echo, to return, to be the kind of thing that, when something reaches it, sounds back. And in the physics of it, resonance is exactly that. A system receiving energy at its natural frequency and returning it amplified, giving back more of what it was given at the frequencies it knows best. But the word has traveled far from its physics. It has come to describe the feeling of something landing truly, a piece of music that resonates, a sentence that resonates, a moment that resonates. And what those uses share with the physics is more than metaphor. The fact, plainly, acoustic resonance occurs when an external frequency matches the natural frequency of a system, causing it to vibrate with increasing amplitude. The principle underlying the sound of musical instruments, the design of concert halls, and the acoustic properties of the human vocal tract, where resonant chambers selectively amplify certain frequencies produced by the vocal folds. When something resonates with you, something in you is vibrating at the same frequency. Something in you recognizes the incoming pattern as similar to a pattern you already carry, and it amplifies. It returns the energy enriched. This is what it means for music to move you, for a voice to reach you, for a story to land somewhere real. Not that something was inserted from outside, but that something outside found a frequency you were already carrying, and the two began, for a moment, to ring together. You were already the instrument. The music simply found your note. In a small village in the mountains of Georgia, the country, not the state, there is a tradition of polyphonic singing so old that its origins cannot be traced. 3 voices, sometimes 4, each carrying a separate line that is, on its own, incomplete. Not a melody with harmonies beneath it, 3 separate melodies, each one making sense alone, but making something entirely different when they are together. Something that could not have been predicted from any single line. Something that emerges only in the space between the voices, in the frequencies they create together that none of them creates alone. UNESCO has recognized it. Musicologists have studied it. But the villagers simply call it singing. They have always simply called it singing. The fact, plainly. Georgian polyphonic singing, recognized by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity, is characterized by three-voice structures, with independent melodic lines and complex harmonic relationships, including the deliberate use of dissonance and vocal techniques that produce combination tones audible as a fourth voice, not sung by any individual performer. Three voices singing together can produce a fourth voice that no one is singing. A tone that emerges from the mathematics of their overlap, a phantom presence created by the interference of their waves, audible, real, belonging to no single throat. This is what happens when voices join genuinely, when each one brings its own complete line and trusts the others to bring theirs. Something arises that was not in any of the parts, something that could not have been planned, a voice made of relationship rather than breath. Perhaps this is what community has always been, underneath whatever else it is called. The surface of the sun is not silent. It churns. It convects. Great columns of hot plasma rise from the interior, cool at the surface, and fall back down, a process happening simultaneously across the entire stellar surface, at scales that dwarf continents, producing pressure fluctuations that propagate through the solar atmosphere as acoustic waves. Scientists have translated these waves into audible sound shifted in frequency by many octaves to bring them within human hearing range, and what they produce is something between a roar and a hum, something vast and continuous and strangely, unexpectedly, peaceful. The fact, plainly, the sun's surface convection produces acoustic oscillations, the basis of helioseismology, that have been recorded by instruments aboard spacecraft, including SOHO and SDO. When these oscillations are frequency shifted into the audible range and made available as audio, they produce a continuous, low, rhythmic sound that researchers and science communicators have shared publicly as the sound of the sun. The star at the center of everything you have ever known is humming. Right now, while you rest, while the night holds the part of the earth you are sleeping on away from it, the sun is on the other side of the world, making its sound into the void as it has made its sound for 4.5 billion years. It does not need you to hear it. It does not know you are there. And yet you are made, in part, from the elements it forged: the carbon in your cells, the calcium in the bones your skull is made of. You are listening to something that made you, the hum of the thing that, in the deepest sense, you came from. There is a form of throat singing practiced by the Tuvan people of southern Siberia, in which a single performer produces two distinct pitches simultaneously. One voice, two notes. The lower tone is a sustained drone, steady, continuous, the foundation of everything. Above it, shaped by the precise position of the tongue and the lips and the soft architecture of the oral cavity, a second tone rises, clear, flute-like, almost ethereal, a melody emerging from a single human throat, the way a second voice might emerge from a conversation that has finally found its depth. The performer is not doing two things. They are doing one thing so completely that it becomes two. The fact, plainly, Tuvan Kume, overtoned singing, involves the selective amplification of specific harmonics of the vocal fundamental frequency, through precise shaping of the vocal tract resonances, allowing a single performer to produce a clearly audible melodic tone simultaneously with a sustained drone, a technique that requires years of practice and exploits the same acoustic principles as the formant structure of ordinary speech. Every voice already contains multiple frequencies. Every sustained note you produce carries overtones above it, harmonic multiples of the fundamental, present but not separately audible in ordinary speech and song. The throat singer does not add something that wasn't there. They simply learn, through long, patient practice, to open what was already present, to let the harmonics that were always riding above the fundamental become separately audible. They are not creating a second voice. They are revealing one that was always there, waiting quietly inside the first. A child puts a shell to their ear and hears the ocean. They are not hearing the ocean. They know this, or learn it eventually, or are told it by someone who wants to be accurate. What they are hearing is the ambient sound of the room around them, the low hum of the space they are in, gathered and shaped and amplified by the resonant chamber of the shell, returned to their ear as something richer, fuller, more continuous than the room's sound alone. The shell takes what is already there and gives it back transformed. It does not invent the sound. It listens to what is present and reflects it in a form the ear can receive as beautiful. The fact, plainly, the sound heard in a seashell is caused by acoustic resonance. The shell's cavity amplifies ambient sound frequencies that match its resonant frequency, producing a noise that varies with the size and shape of the shell and the ambient acoustic environment, and has nothing to do with the sea the shell once inhabited. The child is not wrong to find it beautiful. The beauty is real, produced by real physics, real resonance, real acoustic principles that work the same way, regardless of what the source of the sound is. The shell takes the ordinary air of an ordinary room and gives it back as something that sounds like vastness, like distance, like the edge of something enormous and ancient and continuous. Perhaps this is what all beauty does. Takes what is already present, ordinary light, ordinary air, ordinary time, and returns it in a form the ear or the eye or the heart can receive as more than ordinary. The world, reflected back. The room, made to sound like the sea. There are monks in a monastery in France who have been waking before dawn for over 1,000 years to sing. Not the same monks, the same practice carried forward from voice to voice, generation to generation, in an unbroken chain of transmission that reaches back to a time when the monastery itself was new and the surrounding forest was old. Every morning, in the cold dark before the sun, voices rise in the same chants that rose 1,000 years ago, in the same stoned space. The practice has survived wars, plagues, revolutions, the collapse and rebuilding of entire civilizations. The voices keep rising. The chant keeps being handed forward. The fact, plainly, the Benedictine Abbey of Saint-Pierre de Solesmes in France, founded in 1010, has maintained a continuous tradition of Gregorian chant performance and scholarship for over a millennium, becoming a center for the revival and study of plain chant in the 19th century, and continuing its daily choral office to the present day. 1,000 years of voices, rising before dawn. Not because anyone required it, not because anyone was watching or measuring or awarding anything, but because something in the practice itself proved worth continuing, because the people who received it found, each in their own time, that it gave them something real, something that the morning, without it, did not quite provide. Whatever that something is, the stillness before the day begins, the sound of one's own voice joining a tradition older than one's life, the particular quality of a stone room receiving chant in the dark it has been worth waking for, every morning, for 1,000 years. That is a long argument, and it is an argument made entirely in sound. A recording exists of the composer Johannes Brahms, made in 1889 on an Edison cylinder. The recording is damaged, muffled, obscured by the noise of early technology and more than a century of physical deterioration. But within it, faintly, a piano can be heard. And within the piano, a performance hesitant in places, not quite what Brahms was known to be capable of, perhaps affected by the novelty of the situation, the strangeness of playing for a machine, but there, real. His hands on the keys, the sound of them traveling through air and into a horn and onto a cylinder in 1889, and then forward, across time, to now. The fact, plainly, a cylinder recording made at a 1889 demonstration in Vienna, is believed to contain the voice of Johannes Brahms, and a partial performance, one making it among the earliest known recordings of a major classical composer. The recording has been digitally restored by researchers and made publicly available, though significant audio degradation limits its fidelity. Brahms has been dead for more than 120 years. And yet the air that his hands set in motion, the specific pressure waves produced by strings struck by hammers in a room in Vienna on a particular afternoon in 1889, those waves were caught and held, and are now released again whenever someone plays the recording. He did not know he was reaching forward. He was simply playing. And yet here it arrives, across all that time, still carrying the shape of what his hands did. Sound is the most faithful kind of record. It holds the shape of the moment it was made in, and waits. Right now, while you are still, while your breathing has slowed and the day has receded to wherever days go when they are finished, your body is making music, not metaphorically. The rhythms of your body, heartbeat, breath, the slow waves of neural activity moving through your brain as sleep approaches are oscillating systems, each with its own frequency, each capable of synchronizing with the others. As you move deeper toward sleep, these rhythms begin to align. The breath slows to match the heart's patient pace. The brainwaves lengthen into the slow, rolling patterns of deep rest. The body finds its coherence, its own internal harmony. A chord made of biology, sustained for the length of the night. The fact, plainly, cardio-respiratory coupling, the synchronization of heart rate and respiratory rhythms, increases during sleep and meditative states, and is associated with increased parasympathetic nervous system activity and improved sleep quality. Simultaneously, the brain transitions through characteristic electroencephalographic patterns, from alpha waves 8 to 12 Hz through theta 4 to 7 Hz to delta waves 0, 5 to 4 Hz in progressively deeper sleep stages. You are an instrument finding its tuning. Right now, without effort, without intention, the systems of your body are moving toward coherence, toward the particular harmony that only happens when you are fully, deeply at rest. It does not require anything of you. It only requires that you stop requiring things of yourself. The music of the body happens when the conducting stops, when the effort releases. When you simply allow the rhythms that were always there to find each other in the quiet and begin, gently, to align. Somewhere in the ocean tonight, a whale is singing a song that has never been sung before. Not because the whale has composed something, not because it has sat with an intention and worked toward it, but because the song of a humpback whale is never quite the same twice. It evolves continuously, phrase by phrase, year by year, through a process of gradual variation and cultural transmission that means no two performances are identical. The whale singing right now is singing something that has never existed and will never exist again, in exactly this form. A singular event, offered into the dark water, received or not received, and then gone. The fact, plainly, humpback whale songs undergo continuous, progressive change over time, a process documented across decades of recording by researchers, including Roger Payne, with individual phrases evolving gradually through a population such that a song recorded at the end of a breeding season differs measurably from the same population's song at the beginning, making each performance a unique expression of a continuously evolving cultural form. Every voice, every night, singing something that will not come again. This is true of the whale, and it is true of you. Whatever you said today, whatever you hummed to yourself, whatever words you offered to whoever was near those specific vibrations, in that specific sequence, have never existed before and will never exist again. The universe received them. The air carried them. They dispersed into the world in the way all sounds disperse, transformed but not lost, gone as sound but permanent as energy, part of the total of everything that has ever been said. You spoke. The world received it. That is enough. Even now, as you move toward sleep, your ears are still open, still listening, still sorting the sounds of the night into safe and not safe, familiar and unfamiliar, worth waking for and worth releasing. They have been doing this every night of your life, every night since you were small enough to need someone to check the sounds for you, and every night since you became the one who checks. a faithful, tireless, ancient system, working quietly at the edge of your awareness so that the rest of you can go, so that the rest of you can fully, completely, safely let go. The fact, plainly, auditory processing during sleep involves active thalamocortical gating mechanisms that selectively suppress responses to non-significant sounds while maintaining sensitivity to personally relevant or novel stimuli. A system that protects sleep continuity while preserving the capacity to respond to genuine threat signals, representing one of evolution's most elegant solutions to the problem of remaining safe while unconscious. You are guarded by your own hearing, not by walls alone, not by locks, not by any external system, but by the quiet intelligence of a biological system that has been refined over hundreds of millions of years to do exactly this. Hold the perimeter of sleep gently, so that everything inside it can be still. You do not need to listen tonight. The listening is already happening. It was always already happening. You can go deeper. You can release the last small tension of monitoring the world. Something in you is already doing it. Something in you has always done it. You are held. And now, at the end of all these facts, all these sounds, all these small and vast and ancient and immediate things, what remains is simply this. You are made of matter that vibrates. Every atom in your body is oscillating right now, at the frequency of being alive, at the temperature of a warm night, in the particular configuration that is you and has never been anyone else. The air around you is carrying vibrations you cannot hear, the infrasound of the building, the electromagnetic pulse of the atmosphere, the distant acoustic signatures of weather and water, and the slow geological conversation of the earth. And somewhere far above all of this, in the cold dark between stars, a golden record is moving through interstellar space, carrying the sound of a mother's voice, and rain, and music, and the specific, irreplaceable sound of human beings who wanted the universe to know they were here. The fact, plainly, you are here. This is the only fact that has been true of every living thing that has ever existed, and the only fact that for each of them eventually ceased to be true. Tonight, it is still true of you. You are here. The night is here. The sounds around you are here, small, ordinary, faithful. Your breath is here, slowing now, following some rhythm older than your name for it. Your body is here, finding its coherence, its internal harmony, the particular music it makes when the day finally releases it and the night receives it fully. Somewhere, a whale is singing into dark water. Somewhere, monks are sleeping before they rise to sing. Somewhere, the sun is ringing like a bell on the other side of the world, and the atmosphere is pulsing at its ancient frequency, and the earth beneath you is carrying its slow vibrations through stone and soil, and the long patience of geological time. And here, in the middle of all of it, quietly, with no requirement to do or understand or remember anything, you, breathing, still, held by the sound of a world that has never once gone silent. Let the sounds around you be what they are. Let them carry you. Let the small, faithful noises of the night do their ancient work of telling your nervous system, nothing has changed. Everything is continuing. The refrigerator hums. The building breathes. The air moves gently through whatever gap the night has found. You can go now. You can follow the breath down into the quiet. You can let the last small vigilance release, like a hand opening, like a note resolving, like a sound dispersing into the world it was always part of. The night will do the rest. It always has. It always, gently, has. I hope you sleep well and dream softly. Good night.